Doing well. How about you?
Good. How goes it on Clerk Week?
Clerk Week has started out with a bang, to say the least.
I hope that's a good thing.
Well, it is. It's a clerk thing. It's what we do.
We're all in attendance. It's looking pretty good.
Looks like it. No, Carrie. Still missing Carrie.
All right. Still got a few
We have a
minutes
couple of minutes.
Yeah, we got time.
Yep.
See you. Oh, I do now.
You're not muted. There's 30 people.
Oh my God.
This is a reminder to please make sure you mute your devices. It keeps the distractions from occurring.
Hey, I wanted to.
And if I notice that you are unmuted, I may end up having to mute you. And to unmute or mute your device, it's *6 from your either a landline or from your cell phone. From the bottom of your screen, if you look towards the bottom, there's a mute button. You would just click on that to mute and unmute.
Oops. There we go. Oh, gee.
And I'm going to mute you.
To be heard, do we push 6 when we want to enter?
*6 will unmute your device, yes, when the mayor calls for public comment.
Okay, then I just push number 6 when it's my turn to be heard on the items way down the agenda.
*6 will unmute and mute you, Mr. Brown.
Okay.
So Britt, we're still waiting on Carrie.
It looks like it. I don't see her, and we're letting people in as they appear.
All right. We can give it a minute or two.
Okay. And while we're waiting, Mayor, I'll just kind of cover the muting and the unmuting again. Just remember to keep your device muted until the mayor calls for public comment. *6 will unmute and mute you. Also at the very bottom or at the bottom of your screen, there is a reactions tab. If you click on the reactions tab and click raise hand, the mayor will recognize you at the time for public comment. Also, any comments in the chat are not considered public record and will not be made part of the record. If you want to address the council, please make sure you raise your hand or speak up at the time that the mayor calls for public comment.
Stuff at senior admiring movie. Which I enjoy. Oh, wow.
Britt, why don't we give her a couple more minutes and then otherwise we'll get going.
Okay.
Seems unlikely she would have forgotten.
Yeah. I am slowly getting the hang of this.
Carrie's here.
All right, Carrie looks
she
like
is.
she's, yep.
I'm trying. Hold on.
Didn't want to start without you.
Oh, you could have. I'm sorry. I'm being an innkeeper today. Sorry, everybody.
The damn work gets in the way, doesn't it?
It does every once in a while. All right. I apologize. Thank you so much for waiting if you did.
Which we did. Well, that noted, it is so slightly after 4:30 on the May 3rd, 2021. Why don't we have a roll call, Britt?
Hey, Councilmember Barron,
Here.
Ferlito. I see you.
Here.
There you go. Tice,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards,
Here.
Mayor Potter.
Yeah.
Hey, we have a quorum.
All right, we have a quorum. We can conduct tonight's business. Britt, did you want to do anything more about explaining the protocols around the Zoom meetings?
I think I'll just give it one more shot to help those people who had, who are just joining us or joined after I made the last announcement. For those who are joining the meeting via computer, your controls for participating are located along the bottom of your Zoom screen. To mute and unmute yourself, you click the microphone icon at the bottom left. To turn your camera on and off, click on the camera icon, also located at the bottom left of your screen. When it's time for public comments, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand by clicking on the reactions icon at the middle part of the bottom part of your screen. Looks like a smiley face, and then you click raise hand. For those who are joining the meeting by phone, either a landline or mobile, you can raise your hand when it is time for public comment by pressing *9. *6 unmutes you when you're on your telephone. During public comment, you will be called on to speak in the order in which your hand was raised. Please wait to be called on before speaking. Once all of the people who have raised their hands have been called on, there will still be an opportunity for anyone unable to raise their hand to unmute and speak at that time. Please remember to keep your devices muted. If necessary, I can mute you from this end. Many of us can. And chat comments are not part of the record. Please address the City Council publicly if you want to have your comments on the record. There we go, Mayor.
Excellent. Thank you, Britt. So we do have 3 items under extraordinary business, 3 presentations. I believe the first one will be Amy Herzog with Visit Carmel under extraordinary presentations. Amy, the floor is yours.
Wow, thank you. So quick. Good afternoon, Council and Mayor and public. I am Amy Herzog, Executive Director for Visit Carmel, and thank you for having me this afternoon. Oh, Britt, are you giving me screen sharing powers?
I think you have screen sharing power.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, just a sec. Almost forgot. Okay, so here we go. Is everyone seeing a annual report screen? No. Okay, hang on a second. I may not be able to do full screen.
I had it for a minute.
I did? Okay, let me try again then. Sorry about this. Is this what you see? I mean, you can see it now, but just not, it's not full screen.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's 2020 and 21 ag market report,
Okay.
annual report. Yeah.
Okay, I think I just can't go all the way full screen, but if everyone can see this, I'll move forward with this. Okay, no. Mayor, you're seeing the screen?
Yep, I
Okay,
got the screen.
great. Okay, sorry about that delay. So I believe you, everyone on council has been sent a full copy of our annual report. So for today for you, I've just pulled out a couple of highlights. I just want to talk about a brief overview of some of Visit Carmel's operations, talk a little bit about some of the highlights of our marketing from the past year, and then delve into some of our strategy and for our recovery campaign as we go throughout 2021. And then just as a reminder, and for those who may not be aware, Visit Carmel is funded, the majority of our funding comes from overnight stays via Carmel's hotel partners. So, and you may recall in the past couple of months, the Carmel Hospitality Improvement District did just renew for an additional 10-year term. So this is a sustainable funding source. The rest of our funding, our revenue comes from assessments through Carmel Restaurant Improvement District, as well as an annual investment by the city of Carmel. And our board of directors is structured very much reflective of those funding sources. And that includes a board seat filled by Mr. Rearig, as well as an advisory role from Councilwoman Tice. And we very much value their input, as well as the rest of the input from our purely volunteer board of directors and our committee members. So, you know, in this past year, we really pulled together, we were able to stay very true to our mission and our objectives that we have had for many years now. And the other point I want to make on this slide is just understanding what integrated marketing means, because I mention it a lot. And what that means is that we use a whole family of marketing tactics, all of the ones that are at our disposal in order to maximize the effectiveness of our strategy or our campaign or our message or ideas. So I may give an example that's just an ad, but in most cases, we're using a whole variety of platforms to support a campaign that we might be issuing at that moment. And now just for a little dose of some reality, over the past year of 2020, following 4 years of TOT growth, we experienced a 45% decline in TOT and a 37% drop in the occupancy rate at our hotels. On the more positive side, our average daily rate only fell by about 12%. And we are feeling cautiously optimistic at this time, because the last 2 months have begun to be a lot more favorable in terms of visitation. And our financial report very much reflects that optimism. Visit Carmel's budget is on a calendar basis instead of a fiscal basis. So we're on the calendar year. But when we look at our projected revenue and expenses for 2021, we are projecting that we are going to regain a lot of what the plunge that we experienced in 2020. Now, most of this revenue is going to be gained from the increased percentage that the HID just passed from a 1% to 2% assessment on overnight stays. In addition, we are budgeting to have a much larger carryover reserve into 2022 than we have had in the past. And that's because we want to make sure that we have the funds that we need in order to stay competitive for a sustained amount of time. In a year that we're anticipating, still some unexpected things can happen, and also of some very intense competition from other destinations. And now, just as I turn to marketing a little bit, I realize that many of us probably don't want to relive this past year, but we're actually quite proud of the work that we did do this past year. In addition to that, we found some really valuable lessons learned through that experience. So, you know, if I can bring us back to the beginning of this pandemic about a year ago, one of the things that we quickly did was we worked with our agencies to develop a very flexible 4-phase marketing plan. And that was to take into account the changing travel and safety protocols that were in place, as well as that changing traveler sentiment, as well as taking into consideration that of our community, both the residents and the business owners. And we quickly realized that the path to recovery was going to take a very nonlinear form. And we needed to have campaigns with a clear vision and clear goal, but at the same time, we needed the flexibility to make a shift as needed, depending on the situation. And that's exactly what we did. We started with a goodwill and safety messaging. And for the first time, we were communicating with our visitors to tell them not to come to Carmel, to stay home. And as hard as that time was for all of us, it really gave our organization the time that we needed to regroup and rebudget and re-strategize how we were going to approach that next year. And we really intensified our communication systems, and we had a much closer contact with the rest of the community and community organizations in order to all get our bearings. But I do believe we were able to do that and come up with some clear and calm strategies and communicate with the public from that space. And that goodwill and safety messaging underlined every decision we made moving forward, and it continues to underlie our decisions today. Now, in partnership with the public library back in last spring, we had a very timely unveiling of the Carmel shell mural. It was originally intended as something that we were doing before the pandemic hit, but it quickly took on a new symbol, one of unity and hope and rebirth. And we're really proud that we were able to do that and contribute to the community in that way. And now it's continuing to exist as it was intended, as a place branding tool for people to take pictures in front of, and as an homage to our artistic heritage. But now it's also a symbol of so much more. As we moved into the late spring, even though most essential businesses or only essential businesses were open, and we weren't actively marketing for visitors, there were indeed visitors coming to the area. So we started to focus on in-market messaging of responsible travel and educating the visitors about expectations. At the same time, we launched a Dream Now campaign where we were sending out inspirational and aspirational images and messages, building that consumer confidence that they should start thinking about a future trip to Carmel. And it was also during this time that we worked with the Carmel innkeepers on the clean and safe commitment. They developed their own specific custom guidelines that were more appropriate for the smaller Carmel style inn. But we use this as an opportunity to do some branding and again, to have a cohesive look and feel, and also build that confidence amongst the visitor that when it was time, that this was going to be a safe place for visitors to come to. And that cohesive message and that branding permeated all the various in-market signage that we did regarding responsible and safe travel. And we were able, in many cases, to work cooperatively with other area organizations in order to do a lot of these pieces. And as we proceeded through the summer and we were back open for travel, we actually started to experience situations where we felt that we had visitor numbers that almost felt like pre-pandemic numbers. And we quickly created 2 additional campaigns during this welcome back phase, one encouraging more of a midweek stay and the other that encouraged longer stays. So taking advantage of the shift in lifestyles for working and school at home, we launched a work, stay, and play campaign. And of course, as we watched our restaurants go through various iterations of being takeout only or having outdoor dining and now the limited indoor dining, one thing became very clear, and that was just how grateful we were that we had had a full year of the Carmel Restaurant Improvement District already behind us, because we had spent that year institutionalizing our communications with those restaurants and also building a really dynamic set of photo assets. So we had photo and video in a comprehensive way so that we could create really effective and quickly create campaigns that would be comprehensive enough that it would include all the restaurants in Carmel-by-the-Sea. And again, having that extra funding from the restaurants allowed us to pull together local TV ads and print ads and be really creative on social media so that we could work very closely. It was a way to reach quickly our residents and locals as well as visitors, depending on what the situation was in the area. And another way where we continue to stay top of mind is working with the media on what we called earned media placements. That's travel magazines. That third-party credibility that comes from that non-paid media really enhances a destination's status as a world-renowned destination that Carmel is. And these are very highly respected and widely followed publications. And that's likewise with the accolades that we achieved during the year. We really incorporated the Condé Nast Traveler Award as the #3 best small city in the US into a lot of our marketing and to our digital ads as well. And again, it enhances our status as that world-renowned destination. So just last month, just a little more than a year after this pandemic started, we launched what we called our recovery campaign. And that's what we're calling it. It's time to discover pure inspiration. It's a multimedia campaign with a digital first strategy. And what that means is the bulk of our allocation is on digital ads. So that's an internet advertising, but you can see there 70% of that's being allocated across to attract high intent travelers who are more likely to book a stay in Carmel, but we're using a much wider variety of digital outlets listed there in order to get to those travelers. And right now we've got about 27% of our budget allocated for TV ads, which is more about generating that brand awareness. And again, this is a fully integrated campaign, but most of the ads will direct that consumer toward a brand new curated website landing page that we created. And this one is filled with dynamic motion graphics and videos and new photos and new content so that the consumer, when they see our enticing ads, they come and they land on a website that shows just the dynamic nature and what Carmel is like today, and just as enticing as it is in real life. And as I mentioned, we do have TV ads running currently. They're running in the Los Angeles and San Diego markets. And that is to push that longer stay. From people who come from farther tend to stay longer, and they also tend to spend more. In addition, our digital ad campaign is two-pronged. We start with a it's time to discover type of messaging. And then if anyone shows any kind of interest in that message, they're then retargeted with a stay longer and explore more secondary messaging. And as another component, a new component for us in terms of recovery, is that we are devising an expanded fly market strategy. Now, this is based on a really successful campaign we just ran in cooperation with the Monterey Airport. We ran this for most of February and half of March to support the new direct flight from Seattle. And it was such a successful campaign that as well as the trends for a more intense desire for domestic leisure travel, as well as the fact that organizations like the Monterey County CVB are currently also running national and fly market advertising. We think there's a real opportunity for us to leverage those additional campaigns and maybe dovetail on some of what they are doing as well. Again, this will be pushing that longer midweek stay. And over the past couple of years, we have run a Love Carmel Like a Local responsible travel campaign throughout various times, especially during the summer. But in anticipation with the potential for an increased visitation this summer, as well as the increased responsibilities on the traveler to be safe and behave in a certain way when they're in a destination, we're really beefing up some of that messaging. We've got a new landing page on our website for people to go to learn about how to be here safely. But we're also initiating a geofencing campaign. So as creepy as it sounds, when someone has a mobile phone and that it is detected as being out of area and they are in Carmel, they'll get pinged with a Love Carmel Like a Local ad the way you see it here. If they go on social media at all, that will show up on their phones. And then for those of you who are interested, we have a lot more kind of numbers, metrics, and results as part of our annual report, which can be found on the Visit Carmel website. If you page all the way down to the footer and click on Visit Carmel, that's where you'll access some of our kind of back-end information, including our agendas for our meetings and our minutes, which, by the way, our meetings are open to the public, and you can find our annual report there as well. But I just want to end by saying, this pandemic has really been a collective reminder of what travel does for us. It gives us freedom and it gives us togetherness. But it also we've also learned that you just can't take that for granted, and how important it is to be prepared for any uncertainties. So Visit Carmel is going to continue to market responsibly and strategically. And we just want to let you know how much we
Hello, Bennett Sculpture. Hi.
We appreciate the stronger relationship we have now with the community as well as the city. And we just want to thank you for your support and for your partnership.
Amy, thank you for the presentation. Most interesting. Are there any questions or comments by council members before I go on to the next presentation? Bobby?
Yeah, I would just like to just give a shout out to Amy. I've worked on so many of these Zoom calls and different things through this year, and I've worked with Amy since she started, and she's just such a bright light. She does such a good job, and thank you, Amy. We're really lucky to have you on our team.
Thanks so much, Bobby.
Anybody else? Well, Amy, I agree with Bobby. I mean, in a very difficult time to get a message out there, I really appreciate your flexibility. You know, the climate change, the marketing opportunities kind of flexed all left and right. And so I really appreciate your being so adaptable to whether it's stay away, whether it's come and visit. You did a great job of getting the message out there. Your work is just beginning though, unfortunately. Karen.
Yes, Amy, I want to echo those sentiments. You have done a great job this year. I also want to point out that we sell scenery here in Carmel, and the beautiful scenery, the white sand beach, it's all very inviting. And I urge all of us to remember that, because we have to take care of our beautiful town and do what we can to continue its environmental consciousness. So thank you for emphasizing that. I appreciate it very much.
And Carrie, thank you for your time on the committee. Appreciate that too. All righty, that noted, why don't we move on then to MCCVB, Monterey County Convention and Visitor Bureau. Rob O'Keefe, are you around? There you are.
I'm here.
Excellent, welcome.
And I also have with me our Vice President of Finance, Paul Martin. And he and I will share some information. I just want to say thank you, Mayor and Council members, for the opportunity to spend some time with you and provide you an update. Just for everybody in the audience, we are Monterey County Convention and Visitors Bureau. Our job is regional destination marketing. So we market the entire county. As you know, the county is made up of very distinctive areas, very special areas that each has its own personality. Particularly, crown jewel in the county's crown would be Carmel-by-the-Sea. And what I'm going to explain, what Paul and I are going to explain is basically how we complement, supplement, and extend what Amy just got done explaining that she and Visit Carmel do to attract visitors and attract the right visitors. We're founded on the notion that when it comes to travelers, more travelers isn't necessarily better, better travelers are better. And what we mean by that, and Amy covered some of this, is the more valuable travelers who come when we need them most, midweek and off season in particular. And we have both a responsibility and obligation and a passion for ensuring that we're bringing the right people here when we need them. And we're making sure people know what they need to know before they come and while they're here. And that in particular, it has to do with sustainable travel, responsible and safe travel. As Amy had indicated, we several times this year, not just because of COVID, but we've gotten a double whammy and a triple whammy in many instances with fires and floods and broken Highway 1. We do a lot of crisis communication. We do a lot of research that extends our collective knowledge as an entire community, which we do a lot of sharing with. Carmel-by-the-Sea, we work closely with Chip, of course, with Amy and Visit Carmel. Councilmember Richards is an advisor on our board. John Lloyd, the general manager of the Pine Inn, is on our board and has been for a lot of years. So there's a lot of info sharing, a lot of planning, strategic thinking that goes along between our organizations. And I guess to start that, let's jump to the next slide to talk about where we've been in this past year. And I'm going to hand it over to Paul to talk a little bit about the impact.
Yeah, so we've been grinding a lot of numbers. We've been sharing those with Amy and Bob, Chip and others, but and it's not surprising, it was pretty ugly. We do get the Dean Runyon, we did just receive the Dean Runyon report, a preview of it, and the loss in visitor spending was $1.75 billion in this county. That was for the calendar year of 2020 compared to the calendar year of 2019, which was quite close to our original estimate of $1.787 billion. So unfortunately, we were rather accurate on that. The we are estimating that the fiscal year 2021 loss for Carmel-by-the-Sea on TOT will be about 2.2 million, and that the loss in visitor spending in Carmel-by-the-Sea for that same fiscal year is probably about 84 million, and that's from a base of $256 million in total visitor spending in a pre-COVID year. That was from 2019. We all know what it's done to the employment picture, and those losses have been estimated between 25 and 50% over the course of the year. We're seeing things turn around now, and we're hoping that we can continue to grow from here.
And a couple points I'd like to add. The countywide impact of the 1.75. Paul built our COVID impact model back in April of last year that originally projected the 1.78. So unfortunately, very accurate. And that's what's been guiding the decision-making for our organization, and by extension for those that we work with throughout the entire COVID year. That's helpful to know that we've had that level of accuracy, because it's also what's going to guide us out of this. And there's a couple of things that I wanted to point out, some misperceptions that I think are taking place. One is that when we have a busy weekend, that tourism is back, and it's really not. In a lot of instances, and if you ask hoteliers this, it's not the customer that we had pre-COVID. And a lot of instances, it's day trippers who are coming in and not really contributing from an overnight standpoint, and not spending the dollars that we would hope to have them spend. And we are not targeting day trippers. We're targeting those people who are going to come in and stay over. And we'll talk about this in a second, adding on to what Amy said about further out markets, fly-in markets, both short haul and long haul. And then the other perception, misperception, I would say, is that in many instances, restaurants, shops, and hotels are not back to full employment. In a lot of ways, GMs and staff have been forced to extend who does what, wearing multiple hats. And that's going to continue on for a while until we get back the customer that we had pre-COVID, and we get back to some level of recovery and stabilization beyond where we're at right now. So we still have a lot of work to do, despite what you might see on a particularly busy weekend. Our marketing priorities over the course of the last year, we've always focused on sustainable travel. We've had a program in place for years on that, where we encourage travelers to come here responsibly and respectfully, to treat our destination like a local. If you think about it, it just makes sense from a number of angles. You got to protect the product. We want the product to be every bit as pristine for the next visitor. And more importantly, we want the product where we live. And I'm getting ready to join the Carmel Residents Association, by the way. We want the product to be every bit as pristine for us, for those of us who live here. And so we've continued to do that throughout the COVID year, but we've also focused on safe and responsible, working closely with Visit Carmel. We've had a countywide program, but you've seen it in the village, where we are promoting what it takes to be safe and responsible. We're going to continue that for as long as as long as COVID is in the headlines. We're going to continue to focus on safe and responsible. It's a dollar commitment, but it's a very important one. We can't not do it. Over the course of the COVID year, we focused on drive markets. And during COVID, before COVID, a drive market was 3 hours away. During COVID, it was 6 or 8 hours away. And coming out of COVID, we're focused on further out markets, which I'll talk about. Amy hit on this already. The expanding markets, air service markets, we work very closely together and with the airport. We have a campaign running right now in Seattle and in Portland to start the new service from there, as well as the other markets, the short haul markets, Dallas, Denver. That's where we want travelers coming from. The drive market's always going to be our bread and butter as a destination. But when we can bring more of those fly-in travelers, that gives us more of an opportunity to get that valuable traveler. And those are people that oftentimes they're not driving, they're not bringing their cars, and it lessens the impact, the footprint on our destination. And in the process of getting through COVID, we've been preparing for the comeback, which just launched last week. And I'm going to talk more about that on the next slide. Well, actually, before we get to that, we've been marketing through COVID. We had a campaign running through the winter called Grab Your Moment. We do paid, owned, and earned, so paid media advertising. owned, which is social media, and public relations, which we do quite a bit of, and we do a lot of collaboration with Visit Carmel on that. And we've been marketing to people throughout the COVID, where we've been upping our marketing message and changing it and lowering it, even to the point where we're telling people not to come here. It wasn't just COVID, but went during the fires. It was not a good time to visit. And so we discourage people from doing that. It's not the first time we've ever done that.
That before.
Probably the most sustained time that we've done that. Okay. Now is the moment. This launched last week. This is a national campaign that's running throughout the country to encourage people to be introduced or reintroduced to our brand, to the Monterey County, and in particular, Carmel-by-the-Sea brand. Carmel-by-the-Sea, that picture there, very happy young man in the sand. He is prominently featured in the national TV spot that's running, that kicked off last week and will run for the next 5 weeks. Our focus isn't just to get people here for June and July with this campaign. This is a kickoff for the coming years. We want to reset how people think of our overall destination, and including Carmel-by-the-Sea. We're investing in the future and the future traveler. So this is to reset, refocus, recast the brand in the markets in the Midwest and the East Coast. So short haul, Midwest and East Coast. And when I said we extend what Visit Carmel is doing, what Carmel's doing, if you imagine the circle that Amy described in the marketing network that she has created and run, we work within that and then beyond that to extend that message and get those travelers. Our goal is to accelerate the recovery. A lot of forecasts are saying that we're not going to come back to whatever normal is until 2025. We think we can do that in a better way and a smarter way. And obviously a big part of what we do is always going to be promoting responsible travel. Here are some examples, and we send reports in to Chip and his team twice a year on what we do. This is from the mid-year report and the investment that Carmel-by-the-Sea makes in our organization, which is pooled with the other investment, as well as the TID that hotels throughout the county pay into, which we are forecasting to be over a $6 million budget next year. These are some of the results that we get. We track things very meticulously. And you can see just on this slide, some imagery from our social posts, from our PR. We send referrals, mid-year referrals there in the bottom left corner. That's people coming from our website to a business in Carmel-by-the-Sea's website. So that's essentially someone coming from us to a business in the village and virtually speaking, knocking on their door. It's an opportunity to do business. And just during at the mid-year point, we sent almost 16,000 people saying, hey, I want to do business with you. And then you can see with the earned media ad equivalency, how we track that, and number of publications. So there's a lot more. These reports are 9-10 pages long per report, and these reports can be made available to interested parties. I like to look at what's at stake. And Paul's really good at figuring that out. And as we see him, he figured out how deep the hole was going to get. He also has taken a look at what's at stake over the course of the next year. Now, a lot of squiggly lines, you get that with finance people. I'm used to it, you might not be, but I've gotten good at translating. The green line is the national trend line according to Smith Travel Research. If we don't try real hard, let's say, we could be at that green line of recovery. The blue line, the middle one, is if we are aggressive, if we're collaborative, if we work closely together to get that market share back to drive the rate of recovery. The difference between the blue line and the green line is about $225 million in just hotel revenue. That's not visitor spending, that's just hotel revenue. That's what's at stake here. If we were to get to the purple line, that is 2019, basically. That is pre-COVID. There's another $100 million on the table there. So that gives us a sense of what, from a market share and from a revenue standpoint, what's at stake, and guides our efforts to be as aggressive and smart and responsible as possible. Of course, it's not going to be easy. On the next slide, and Amy alluded to this as well, we're competing with these other counties. This is based on county-wide spend. If you look at our budget per available rooms in each destination, this is what their other budgets are, what they spend per room to bring that valuable customer that we're looking for in Seattle, Portland, the Midwest, and the East Coast. This is what they have to spend. And so it's pretty aggressive. I like to say we punch above our weight, and why wouldn't we? We have Carmel-by-the-Sea, we have Big Sur, we have Pebble Beach, we have a lot to work with. But from a spending standpoint, it's tough. And that's why we're very, very grateful to be able to work with Visit Carmel, because that adds muscle to the overall push. And I'll just point out two of our biggest competitors are Napa and Sonoma. Napa and Sonoma have half as many rooms as we do and twice the budget per room. So again, that just gives you a sense of, the previous slide was what's on the table and others are going after it. This gives you a sense of the firepower they're going after it with. So what does the long term look like? We're looking at not just year to year, and I've had a number of conversations at our board about this and with individuals. Chip and I and Paul and Amy got together a few weeks ago and talked a little bit about this. Year to year planning isn't going to work. We need to look at the long term, and just in this instance, the next 3 years, to set up the next decade of what we want to be and how we want to be as a tourism destination. So we're in that first phase right now, that recovery phase. We're going to implement a strategic planning exercise in this coming fiscal year. We're on a fiscal year budget. So our fiscal year starts July 1, runs through June 30. And we are going to, in the next 12 months, do some strategic planning. That will include Chip and Visit Carmel, where we're going to be sitting down together and say, what do we want to be? Not just in the next few years, but over the next decade. And that's going to help us in phase 2 recalibrate. It's going to include a variety of things, as I say, resetting our compass. Which direction do we want to go in? And let's really take a long-term approach to that. And then phase 3 will be a relaunch of some sort. And that will be defined according to the collaboration that we have with the team at Visit Carmel and the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea. So that's it in a nutshell. I didn't have as many slides or as pretty slides as Amy, but I hope the information is helpful. And Mayor, council members, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Rob, thank you for the presentation. You certainly have your job cut out for you. 12 different cities, 5 different county supervisors, but we all know that the lion's share of the transit occupancy tax does come out of the 5th district. So I appreciate you recognizing that Carmel is an important partner. Council members, any comments, questions? I don't see any.
I'll go again, Mayor. And once again, I just want to say, Rob, thank you. Thank you for understanding Carmel so well, and the nuances and the special needs and desires that we have, that we are looking for that air traveler, not necessarily the drive-in guest. And so I just want to say, we really appreciate you working with us so well over the past couple of years, and welcome to town.
Well, thank you, council member. I would add too that your role as an advisor on our board is extremely helpful. And just over the course of the last few years, we don't need to get into all the stories, but you know as well as I do, your input has really helped shape our approach. And I think we're a lot smarter because of it. So thank you.
Well, Rob, I know it took a while for the board to make up their mind on who to select, but they made a good choice when they picked you. So I appreciate that. My partner around here in the house happens to have a lot of respect for you in the industry. So she does not hand out kudos quickly, but she does really respect you. So that comes as a very good recommendation in my mind. So
I appreciate that, Mayor.
Well done, Rob. Any other questions, comments? All right, guys, why don't we then move on to the Sunset Center presentation. Christine, are you there somewhere?
Actually, I'm here.
Ah, okay, Beth.
Ready to
My
go.
mistake.
And I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Can you guys see that?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Okay, good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council, city administrator, and guests. My name is Beth Bowman. I'm the managing director of Sunset Cultural Center. This is my first time addressing the city council, and joining me today is artistic director Christine Sandine. Together, we'll bring you up to date on SCC activities, satisfying a reporting requirement under Article 3 of our agreement. We'll review our last fiscal year, take a look at our current year of closure, and forecast for a fall 2021 reopening. In this first slide, which hopefully I'm getting to, there we are. You're seeing a summary of our annual audit. It covers almost 3/4 of business as usual and 1/4 of closure. You can see that the pandemic definitely affected our bottom line. We were on target for a successful year. Sunset Presents opened with a season of an inclusive mission-based fundraiser and continued with a variety of live music, comedy, dance, and one of our Broadway events, Beautiful. Then COVID hit. We closed our doors on March 16th and canceled or rescheduled the rest of our season. This put a hard stop to ticket sales, rentals, and triggered refunds on some tickets already sold. At that point, we sent staff home to work remotely under reduced hours. And by the end of June, a series of layoffs and furloughs affected 80% of our staff. We're proud, however, that we held over 130 events, entertained 8,500 patrons, and served 12,000 students with 3 robust arts education programs funded solely by individual donors and foundations. So on to our successes. Even in that tough year, we can look back and appreciate some highlights. Before we closed, students from around the county completed the spring session of Classroom Connections featuring Ballet Hispanico. Pictured here are the dancers post-matinee doing a Q&A with students in the audience. Our arts education programs quickly transformed into virtual offerings, starting with 8 hip hop lessons by artist in residence Eddie Spaghetti. Our spring fundraiser pivoted to an online event during the month of April and became one of our most successful fundraisers to date. SCC's board of directors stayed connected on Zoom, continuing to work together, offering leadership, guidance, and camaraderie. Even our traditional holiday tree made an appearance in the lobby, this time as a 14-foot artificial tree sponsored by Carmel Gibbs. It will grace our lobby for years into the future. Visitors were invited to take photos outside our lobby window with a backdrop of snowflakes painted by local artist Marie Claire. Now on to this financial fiscal year. Here's a look at our third quarter to date and projected year end. We proposed an extremely conservative budget and planned for 0 event income. Results are better than expected. Even with a 25% cut in our city contract, we offered a number of creative outdoor events and were bolstered by a dedicated donor and member base. It looks like we'll end this year with a small surplus. Now, Christine will talk a little bit more about our artistic endeavors.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about the adjusting here. Within a month, as Beth had indicated, we pivoted to providing virtual offerings for our patrons and our donors, and our content featured a combination of internationally touring artists, such as pictured here, Justin Willman, who's Ellen's favorite magician, and blues legend Taj Mahal, all the way to local artists with whom we combined takeout meals from local restaurants. And we also continued providing content that featured, we also continued visual art presentations through our community Marjorie Evans Gallery. And we did a call last spring for local artists, and we called it our You Can't Quarantine Creativity Exhibit. And it featured works created during shelter in place. And a portion of all that work that sold was donated to SCC. We were also, as you might recall, Mayor Potter and Chip, doing city administrator updates live from our stage and featuring some entertainment. And of course, fast forward through the summer months into the fall, we actually were our polling site for this voting district, and it took place safely and with record turnout, I might add, last fall. So now I will go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, many of you probably saw this gargantuan screen that graced the north parking lot for a good part of June. So we had provided the virtual content, but we quickly planned this innovative series, drive-in films, in June. So just a couple of months after our closure, and we were in fact the first entity on the peninsula to do this. We contracted the special receiver and the screen equipment to be transported up from LA. We raised the sponsorship monies to cover these typically prohibitive costs. And we quickly sold out 8 films at 60 cars each within 48 hours. And here's a photo of Bobby and Christine actually too, enjoying themselves. We had lots of community participants. So we appreciate all the support. As the pandemic numbers rose again over last summer, we had to cease this additional activity and we waited for better news. But by October, we had planned drive-in concerts, and that'll take me to the next slide. Okay. Patrons, as you can see by this slide, were able to very much enjoy themselves safely outdoors and in some very creative ways. We have a gentleman here who's affixed a nice comfy seat atop his car. And we have a photo of Marty Stewart, one of our performers, with a couple of young fans, all masked, waving hello at the audience. We also were able to use this stage and provided these activities and hosted these events for the month. And we were also able to offer the venue, if you will, in the space to other local community arts organizations such as First Night Monterey, who did their Day of the Dead celebration. And that is Cultural Commissioner Ellen Martin giving us the peace sign there. So we organized and provided drive-through trick-or-treating as well, and for our local families. So, and then as the weather cooled, we ceased the drive-in concerts and again, turned our attention to the indoor opportunities we could offer and plan for our future events. I just want to say that from day one, we were at the forefront of working with the Monterey County Health Department and engaging with some of the arts advocacy teams across the state to really lobby for support and specific guidelines for our sector, the performing arts, which as you all probably realized, along with some other industries, we were the first to have to close and will likely be the very last to be allowed to reopen. So we're proud of the outreach we did and the partnerships we formed with the public health departments, both at a statewide and a county level. And we've just been consistently working at, not just helping our community, but also participating in a field-wide conversation, the performing arts, which have been really largely decimated across not just venues, but also touring agencies, suppliers, supply companies, labor companies, the artists themselves, managers. So it's been a rough road, but as has been indicated by the 2 previous presenters, we are really, we've learned a lot and we're proud of everyone's resilience and the ability to be flexible and pivot during this really challenging time. On-stage productions for streaming or recording actually have been permissible since day one. And we have hosted an assortment of that activity over the past year as well, which probably partially contributed to the little bit of our net profit at the end of the year. So the most exciting thing today, though, is that we can actually see a light at the end of the tunnel. There's been less restrictive outdoor protocols issued, and they're being updated regularly by the state. Indoor guidelines for movie theaters, which have been allowed to reopen at certain capacities, will serve as a trial for how indoor performance venues will eventually be allowed to reopen. We believe that to be the case by the end of the summer. We have just issued and are still receiving the results of an audience survey that specifically polls our audience members as to what their requirements will be for a safe return to indoor theater. I will tell you, though, that in a couple of slides, Beth's going to show you the calendar reservations for the hall for this fall. It's pretty packed already. So I think there's a big optimism about a return to theater. And we ourselves have a number of rescheduled events for the fall, and our first one being September 30th. That was a sold out concert with the country artists, and 75% of those ticket sales have still been retained, and people are indicating that they're looking forward to coming back. So we're developing all the appropriate protocols, but given that being 5 months away, we're going to just have to continue to adjust our plans as we move towards the fall. So again, I want to thank everybody for the ongoing support. And it's been very heartening to have our donors, our board members, our audience members, and the council and the community all step up to support us during this past year. And I'll turn it back over to Beth.
Thank you. So on to next year's budget. The big reopening year, it's very difficult to budget for. With so many unknowns, we're considering a few scenarios based on indoor capacity and various funding opportunities. In each case, our focus is to continue maintaining this amazing facility and supporting a wide variety of entertainment. We have many steps to take before we're ready to reopen, staffing up, getting systems back online, and managing any new protocols that may be required by the health department. Funding from our city contract is critical to our success. Here's a look, as Christine mentioned, at our reopening fall calendar. September 30th will show Marty Stewart, a rescheduled show. We'll quickly move into a busy fall with the historic presenting partners, more Sunset Present shows, and a few from outside presenters. Staff will return in early July to prepare for the fall opening. In the meantime, we do have some exciting plans for the theater. As you're aware, our city agreement states that the city is responsible for capital expenses, described as anything over $10,000. Great news is that we're at a point now where we are able to raise money to support some needed capital expenses. Our Sunset Theater endowment at the Community Foundation has $55,000 in spendable earnings, and the fund itself now has a provision to accept pass-through donations restricted for theater use, just like projects that I'm about to introduce. I'll also take this time to mention that once we reestablish operating reserves, we will focus on an operating endowment, allocating a percentage of all new unrestricted gifts coming in to it. In the meantime, here are the big plans. Introducing Sunset Center's upgrade project, aimed at keeping the theater at state-of-the-art status. Starting this project now takes advantage of access to the theater while it's dark in the next few months. Details and a proposal were sent over to the city, and I understand were forwarded on to the council. I hope you're as excited about it as we are. The project addresses 5 areas that need attention: stage systems, house and theater lights, and sound and video systems, listed in order of priority. What we've raised so far will almost cover the first 2 items. The initial proposed city match will move us halfway through the theater lights upgrade. We'll be able to complete the project with an additional $175,000 raised and a second city match. In theory, it'd be great to see the funds cut from last year's contract be applied to this project, ultimately reducing outstanding items on the CIP budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions here or at any time. Ken Smith, our volunteer project manager, who was not able to join us today, will also make himself available to follow up on any questions you have. Hopefully sooner rather than later, because time is of the essence. Thank you. We're proud to represent this gem in Carmel and take our role seriously as stewards of this facility. I look forward to seeing you at Sunset Center soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Well done. Thank you, Christine. I think the most telling thing we've seen is the shot that's before us right now, which shows our iconic international destination vacant. Such a tragedy that it sits this way. It's out of beyond our control, but still it is such a unfortunate image right now to look at. No, we'd all like to see it open. We'd like to do whatever we can. But I think one of the words that's come through tonight in all three presentations is flexibility. And I appreciate the flexibility Sunset Center's presented and shown over the last few months, going ahead and saying we can still provide some venues. We just have to be creative and flexible. So Beth, thank you. And thank you, Christine. Council members, any comments? Since I can't see, I don't really know. So
Yes, I have a question.
yes,
Okay.
Karen.
Yes, could you tell me, Beth, what the endowment total is right now? I'm a little confused by the 55,000 that's available and what the total endowment raised today.
The total endowment is one that was started at the end of the big capital campaign that did the remodel of the center back in the early 2000s. So there's a little over 200,000 that's in an endowment fund specifically for the Sunset Theater. The $55,000 are earnings of that endowment that are available to spend at this point.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Any other questions or comments at this time by council members?
I'll make another quick comment, Mayor. And I just want to say thank you to the staff, Christine, Beth, welcome. And we really appreciate your nimbleness, your creativity, and thinking out of the box during this tough time, and really showing your passion for this theater. Thank you.
Well said, Bobby. Any other comments? All right, not hearing any. Beth, Christine, thank you again. Much appreciated. And that concludes our extraordinary business for tonight. Go on to a public appearance opportunity for any member of the public to comment on an item that is not on tonight's agenda. 3-minute limitation on that testimony. You'd state your name for the record, I'd appreciate it. Is there anybody wishing to speak tonight? Britt, you're in charge of the gatekeeping.
I'm looking, I don't see any
Well, yes, Denny Levette.
raised. All right, Denny, go ahead.
I'm on. Oh, for heaven's sakes. Normally I like to include some humor, but that's a little difficult tonight. Anyway, just a little bit about the Concours. A few words, and there's a lot of history. There's through the 30s, 40s, and 50s, Carmel is loaded with history of car shows, et cetera, which you're probably most of you familiar with now. Along came Doug and Jeannie Friedman, a couple from Atlanta, Georgia. Doug was a judge of car shows throughout America for decades. He was very big at Pebble Beach and in judging, did a great job. He came up with the idea of doing the Avenue, which turned out to be more than I ever dreamed of. It was not easy. Of course, going for city council never is very easy, but there were 30 speakers. 29 of the speakers, this is March 2nd, 2006. 29 of the speakers spoke for the event, Concours on the Avenue. One spoke against. I don't blame her. It was Sandra Kasky, who was protecting the Concours in Pebble Beach. Well, everything happened for the best. And Sue McLeod, God loves Sue McLeod. Sue McLeod said, this will be wonderful. I wasn't for it in the beginning, but I'm all for it now. We set it for August 14th, 2007. I called a couple good friends of mine, who pretty unusual characters. One was Bob Lee from Sparks and Reno and Tahoe and et cetera. Probably the biggest car collection in America. 300 to 400 one-off perfect cars. I asked Bob to please bring a car down for the first concours on the Avenue. It was wonderful. He brought with him designer Sergio Pininfarina, who also was a friend, and I was absolutely astounded. Now, what I'm getting to is the biggest compliment for Carmel that I've ever heard. Well, the day of the event. So I go down to see them on the Avenue. They put a car in. Here they are on the corner of Mission and Ocean in front of Tiffany's, this beautiful President Eisenhower's 1963 Cadillac convertible with about 200 miles on it, just from parades. Baby blue, absolutely perfect. And I said, Bob, absolutely magnificent. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. He said, Denny, I've got to tell you something. He said, I love Carmel. I've never seen Carmel in the daytime. He said, the sun is out. It's absolutely beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful towns I've ever seen in my life. This boulevard is beyond belief. He said, I'm going to tell you, we've been in probably a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen concours a year, never seen a location like this. The boulevard, the beautiful buildings, the commercial architecture. This has got to be the biggest winner.
Okay, my timer isn't working. I'm sorry, Denny. My timer went off a minute ago, so I apologize. The 3 minutes, if you could wrap up. I'm so sorry. Don't mean to be rude.
Not to worry, not to worry. In fact, I think I waited longer than that. But anyway, so be it. But one thing about, I'll be a minute. This is the richest hobby in the world, car collecting. Multimillionaires and billionaires come to Carmel, come to the Monterey Peninsula. It's astounding. I'm so proud of what we've done. Please understand, there's nothing like this. The articles, perhaps last year or the year before, 50 articles in Europe about Carmel, about this area, about this wonderful, astounding show. It's brought a lot of people here.
Mr. Levette, if you could summarize, I'd appreciate it. Do it with all due respect.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Denny. Appreciate it. All righty. Is there anybody else wishing to speak tonight? And Britt, I cannot hear that noise go off when the timer, the 3 minutes expires. So
I am going to go with Plan B. So
appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anybody else wishing to speak tonight?
Looks like someone had a phone number ending in 116 has unmuted themselves. Are you wishing to address the council? Nope, they muted themselves.
All righty, that noted, then I'll close the public comment period, bring it back over to announcements. City Administrator, any announcements?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank our fire department and our firefighter paramedics for hosting, and Chief Tomasi and the PD and everyone else who helped out our CERT team. We hosted a vaccine clinic today up at Vista Lobos. Unfortunately, as you're seeing kind of nationally, we didn't get a big turnout. I think we got, 15 or 19 people. We'll work with our team again, perhaps to do one in the future. I do want to thank the people who did come out and got the vaccine. I think it's important that people are vaccinated. It's a message that we're pushing from the public safety perspective. And again, I just want to thank our team for stewarding that clinic today. The other thing, Mr. Mayor, is we do have a very, very full agenda both today and tomorrow. I just want to remind everyone to please be gentle people. Everyone's opinions are welcome here. The council does the deliberation always in a respectful way. So that's what I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chip. City Attorney Brian, do you have anything to announce?
I have no items tonight, Mayor.
That's lovely. Thank you. City Council members, anything on your minds?
Yeah, I do, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to say I had a really special night about 2 weeks ago, and I went to La Playa where there was a live jazz band playing, And then after that, I went to Forest Theater and welcomed the crowd for The Wizard of Oz. And what a special night to see people in the chairs at Forest Theater and enjoy live music. That was it.
Excellent. Appreciate it. Good to know you're out and about. Anybody else on council? All right, see no one, then I'll move on. Oh, Jeff, I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the CERT team and everyone else that works for CHIP for the vaccination clinic this morning. It would be great if we could have more people vaccinated, and I hope the community will help me spread that word. I would like to announce that we are, as usual, having a climate change meeting this month on May the 20th. The agenda isn't finalized because this month we have 3 weeks between the meetings instead of 2, and we're not quite there yet. But I'm pretty sure we're going to be talking about greenhouse gas emissions again and the resilience of the energy grid again. And I believe on tap is I believe that we are going to have a presentation from the Carmel High School kids on what they think and what they're doing about climate change. So this coming Thursday, May the 20th, 2 weeks and a couple of days from today, either at 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I'd also like to note that we have a rather busy week for us as council members. We have our council meeting today. We've got one tomorrow. Next Wednesday, the 12th, we have our retreat. And then also on the 18th, we have a special budget session. So we'll be seeing a lot of each other. Hope the public's equally engaged. I appreciate that. Right, that noted, we can move on to the consent calendar. There's 5 items on the consent calendar. Does any member of council wish to pull an item? Carrie, I see your hand up.
Yes, I'd like to pull number 5, please.
All righty. Is that for comment or discussion or action?
Discussion.
All right. Anybody else with an item on the consent calendar? All right. Why don't we just have a motion? Is there anybody in the public wishing to pull an item from consent? Britt?
I am not seeing any hands raised.
All righty. Well, why don't we just go ahead and get a motion out there on items 1 through 4, and then we can have some discussion around 5. Is there a motion to that effect?
Make that motion there.
Karen?
So moved.
Yeah, that'd be a second then. Bobby Richards with the first, Karen with the second. Any other discussion? Britt, could we get a roll call?
Councilmember Barron,
Yes.
Ferlito,
Yes.
Tice,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards,
Yes.
Mayor Potter.
Aye.
Okay, consent items 1 through 4 pass unanimously.
Okay, so item number 5 is a resolution 2021-013, authorizing the closure of certain streets and the erection of tents on public property for Concourse on the Avenue. Carrie, do you want to get a staff presentation of that, or do you want just a simple comment?
Well, I'm not feeling really comfortable with approving street closures when I'm not clear about how this event organizer is going to scale back this event due to the COVID situation we're in. So I have some questions for Paul because he's our safety guy. And I'd like to know what his recommendations are in terms of scaling back this event. I think we're seeing a lot of events, most events are being scaled back due to COVID. So I would like some suggestions on, I'm not in favor of passing all these street closures because of the size of the event. I think that there's people in the community that are concerned about the number of people that will be coming. The social distancing aspect. So unfortunately, it wasn't clear how the event organizers are going to address those things. So that's why I'm not feeling comfortable with the street closure aspect.
All righty, that noted. Paul, did you want to comment?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you. With any event that we have coming, I think we need to really continue to follow the county guidelines. We've been doing that throughout the year, and it's been a real challenge, but that's been kind of our guiding light when it came to closing the beach and closing parking lots and canceling our other events. Currently, if we were to have an event, an outdoor gathering, the county is saying we can only have 50 people. If we classify this as a private event, we can only have 100. So we would have to scale this event back significantly. If we move into the yellow tier by August, we could have 100 people if it's an outdoor event, or 200 people if it's a private event and everyone can show that they're vaccinated. So we have a lot of challenges here on how we move forward. I did have a conversation today with the Monterey County Health Director, their office, not actually Dr. Moreno. And I asked about June 15th and what would happen, because the governor had mentioned June 15th we'd be reopening, and they're coming up with a Beyond the Blue Book is what they're calling it. I was advised by the county that even if they reopen, we're not sure what the guidelines will be, and they will have guidelines for outdoor events. It may be a number around 5,000 as a max, but they're not sure yet. And so it's very challenging. We can't predict the future. So what we should go by is what we know today and where we're headed. They did mention today in our weekly meeting that there are outbreaks in Washington and in Oregon, which are concerning. So we may see a flare up again, but again, we can't predict the future. So my advice would be to go on what we know currently. And currently we can have 50 people at an outdoor gathering. And that's 400 if we call it a private event. And then if all guests are tested or show proof of full vaccination, currently you could have up to 300 people. So my advice is you'd have to scale this back significantly.
Ashley, you've struggled with this topic the most of any staff person. Do you have a comment or questions or observations?
I just want to speak to the inherent challenge for all of our event organizers who are trying to look to the future to figure out how to plan for an event or reschedule an event or cancel an event. Because as Paul has pointed out, there's been flare-ups in Oregon and Washington. We have the potential for that here as well, but trying to plan for an event when you don't know where you will be in the next few weeks even, or the next couple days is really challenging.
Is there a time sensitivity issue associated with this decision tonight?
This is required by policy C1601, and bringing this forward to you as we work on the application itself and trying to be nimble with whatever COVID protocols would be required. This is one piece of the process that we could, my thinking was that we could take care of now at this point in time, so that if the event's able to move forward, I'm not in front of you, the week before Car Week asking about street closures. So that was my thinking as I've been working with the event organizer for Concours on the Avenue.
Thank you, Ashley. Jeff?
Yeah, thank you. Question for staff. Have any safety measures been proposed or talked about so far in terms of what the organizer might do to keep the public safe?
Yes, we've talked about further distancing the cars from each other, so lowering the number of cars so those can be better spaced out throughout the event venue. We've talked about, and again, nothing's been decided on because everything still keeps changing. And as Paul said, the number of people that are allowed to gather at this point and what it looks like in the tiers, we're not sure where we will be. So we've talked about spacing the cars out. We've talked about additional hand washing types of station. We've talked about directional signage to keep people moving in a certain direction like you see in the grocery store, and we've talked about the effectiveness of such directional signage. We've talked about a ticketed event versus an open event and what that could potentially look like. And we have talked about scaling the event as well. So.
Bobby.
Ashley, thanks for all this work that you guys have been doing on this. I know it's tough. Do we know what any of the other events in town are doing? As far as I know that there are other shows that are continuing to have this. Are they all limiting their people to 300? And then my other question would be, when you say scale back, do you mean scale the land back, like the use of, because it seems like the smaller you get the event, the tighter the people will be. So it would seem like it would make more sense to widen it. But at any rate, I guess my question is, what are the other Concours events doing?
So that's a very good question. I check other cities obsessively, and for the other Car Week events that are happening at Laguna Seca, Quail Lodge, Pebble Beach, those are happening on private properties. So they have the ability to lock an event venue down in an easier way if we're talking about ticketing an event or that type of thing. I've been very focused on our village and what's right for our village. So I haven't talked to other cities about this. I was playing phone tag with Pasadena for a little while, as they were mentioned at a previous council meeting, but we were not able to connect prior to.
Right, before I open up for public comment, is there anybody else on council with questions?
Yes,
All
I
right.
have a question, please.
Karen?
Yes, in your discussions with the applicant, have you discussed them hiring private security guards to enforce masking mandates or distancing? Because I think it would be, it seems like it would be quite a task to actually get people to distance, follow the yellow brick road, so to speak, and keep masks on. I know I've been hearing some comments from shopkeepers that people don't want to wear masks anymore indoors when they enter shops, and they're having issues with that right now. So I wondered, did you talk at all about the organizers hiring their own private security?
We did not talk about hiring private security for that purpose. We did talk about additional volunteers and signage and reminders over that audio system that is throughout the event venue. So yes, we did talk about that, and we did discuss the challenges of that. As I said, I don't envy any event organizer for a large scale type of event trying to plan for the future when we're still in COVID times, and especially plan for a large scale event with a large number of people who are all, moving around, not sitting in a seat or spaced in a seats or things like that. It's very challenging.
All right, thank you, Ashley. Are there any other questions of council members? All right, seeing none, I'll open up the public. If you'd like to comment on this item, please do so. There's a 3-minute limitation on testimony. If you'd state your name for the record, that would be appreciated. Is there anybody wishing to speak?
So you can hit *6 on your phone if you are attending via the telephone. And if not, if you're attending via Zoom, at the very bottom left-hand corner, click unmute, click raise hand in the middle under reactions. That will let the mayor and the council know you want to speak.
Looks like Jeannie Friedman might be trying to speak. No? I guess not.
We would like to wait till everybody else has spoken, if that's
Well,
okay.
I don't know how many else are speaking.
Gerard Matimo?
Can you hear me at all?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, City Council, Administrator, and guests. I'm one of the support personnel who works on this program on Concours on the Avenue. And in meetings gone by with Ashley and the team, we had talked about other such events like Taste of Carmel and being able to herd people around the city using a number of different tools to have footprints placed on the sidewalk and some display screens, some little LED display screens to keep people coming in. We also talked about parking in different areas and having people coming around in sort of a circular fashion. But the number of the other events, I'm responsible for Quail Lodge as well. So there are a number of those protocols in place. And of course, that's different because it is a private venue. But I think, most of the event industry has realized what they need to do. And most of the organizers have realized what they need to do to keep these events going. And usually it involves a little more land or obviously having less attendant cars or a little more land, a bit more widespread, that kind of thing. Those are the things that are being put in place. And of course, the washing stations, more information. And we do have an emergency broadcast system, so we can keep that information flow throughout the whole venue. So thank you for letting me speak. So.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anybody else wishing to speak tonight?
Marcia Taylor?
Hi, this is Mitch and Marcia Taylor. We're residents of Carmel, and I want to point out that I moved to Carmel because I was a car enthusiast. And when I came to the showing on the Avenue in I think it was 2014, that's when I decided we had to live here full time. It's a wonderful event, and I heard 3 long, very professional, very talented people tonight or this afternoon discussing the fact that we need to stimulate this economy. And before we start deciding to reduce the Avenue concourse, I'd like to hear people have a little more concern about all of the income that is derived, not only to hotels and restaurants and shops, but to the other people that support that event. And let's remember that it's important to protect everybody. I understand that. I had COVID. But let's also remember that we have to start living our lives again, and there should be some way that we could put this event on in a safe manner and in a way that still allows it to take place and be the charming, wonderful event that it is. And thank you for your time and the opportunity to be heard.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else?
Kimberly Willison.
Good evening, Mayor Potter, City Council members, City Administrator, and staff. My name is Kimberly Willison. I'm with the Carmel Foundation. You know, as this event benefits so many in our community, I'd like to encourage all of us to find a way to make Concours on the Avenue happen. Speaking on behalf of the Carmel Foundation, through the years, Concours on the Avenue has provided significant funding, more than $440,000, which has helped the foundation provide services like low-income housing and good nutrition for seniors in our village. And because the Carmel Foundation doesn't accept government granting, we're dependent on funding support like this to ensure the continuity of these vital services. So I'm hoping for the betterment of our community that we can find a way to make this as easy as possible while still being safe, so we can once again welcome Concours in August. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Is there anybody else?
There is someone with the phone number ending in 497. Ending in 497, it's your turn. Go ahead and unmute your device. There you go.
Hi, this is Jenny McMurdo from the Carmel Chamber. Good afternoon, Council, and thank you for having this on your agenda today. I just wanted to reiterate what Ms. Kimberly Willison just said, looking at the generous impacts that it has on the community and urging the council to look at maybe passing on contingency of COVID and how our numbers are doing, as well as contingent on maybe some mitigation efforts and not just throwing it out tonight, really considering it for contingency purposes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny. Jill Sheffield looked like she was trying to say something.
I was, and I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand. Sorry. But I would like to remind council tonight is everything everybody says is true. But what's before you tonight is street closures. And that you need to move forward on, because all the things you've talked about are valid, but we need to work through that and get the permit issued. But we can't do that until we authorize the street closures. And as we said, it might need to be spread out. But again, without the street closures, we can't move forward. So I urge all of you to just move on and vote for this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Anybody else?
There are a couple of other phone numbers that are unmuted, ending in 420. I can mute you. Looks like maybe you don't want to speak. Ending in 288.
Britt, that's me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Dale Burns, speaking as a resident of Carmel. I think it's important to keep our options open as relate to this Avenue event. pardon the pun, but the event would clearly give our local businesses a shot in the arm after a devastating year. I just did my stint at the visitor center, and it's open, and we have all of our volunteers come back. I saw today that LA had 0 COVID deaths yesterday. That's a major milestone. Disneyland's open, and my wife attended the Vista Lobos J&J event today, and it appeared it was lightly attended, as the chief said. Let's hope it's because most people have been vaccinated. That would be a good thing. It'd be a shame if we didn't plan for the best possible outcome and make course adjustments if they're needed as we get closer to August. As was just said, the more space we allocate for the event, the easier it will be to socially distance and still absorb a large number of people if it's possible. It won't be without challenges, but with creative thinking and planning, the potential availability of our larger contingent of CERT volunteers, and the likelihood of many other willing volunteers, we should be able to hold a safe event that will help get our economy back on track. Thanks to Doug for continuing to push forward, and the Community Activities Commission for taking prudent steps to make the event a possibility this year. Thanks.
Thank you, Dale. Anybody else?
Mayor, I don't see anybody else with their hand up.
All right, Jeannie, I think you wanted to go.
Actually, I think it's Doug that wanted to go.
It's actually me, Mayor Potter, members of the council, members of the audience. Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words. We really appreciate it. I think the most important thing that we can do right now is, first and foremost, we want to thank City Administrator Chip Rarick. We want to thank Mayor Potter, and we'd like to thank everybody who took the time to encourage Ashley Wright and Doug and Jeannie Friedman to speak with each other. We've done that for the last 2 months, about an hour a week in a committed phone call where we've kicked around everything you could possibly imagine to work out how we might execute Concord on the Avenue. Our hope is that rather than me ramble on and on and on and on, is that tonight you give us the opportunity to have the road closures committed and let Ashley Wright, on behalf of Community Activities Department, on behalf of Carmel, work with Jeannie and myself to find the solutions necessary to make it happen. We're determined to do that. We hope you'll do that in the same way that I would say restaurateurs, wine tasting rooms hugged Carmel, and Carmel hugged back as a city, and you came up with a solution. We can team up. This is the one year that we need to team up, that we need to find a way to look beyond, for Jeannie and myself to do everything we have to do to somehow look beyond our personal concerns, our personal workload. Anything that we have to do to make happen, we need to make it happen. And we hope that you'll reach back. The only way we get past tonight and go forward and have the opportunity to do that for Jeannie and Doug and Ashley to team up. And we've been a great team now for 2 months. We've learned a lot about each other. Our only opportunity is this moment right now. Commit to the road closures and go forward based on what we learn. If we can't go forward because we come up with conditions that we can't overcome financially, that we can't overcome because we don't believe we can execute correctly, methodically, and with public health concerns, then we just won't be able to, whether that's one day from now or many days from now. But without the opportunity to do just that,
we can't plan. We can't go forward.
We can't plan. We can't do anything. It's simply over. And we're hoping that you'll commit in that way to us. Ashley and Jeannie and Doug are a good team. And even though we don't always agree on everything, we don't have to. We've become teammates to make something special happen. And for the Carmel Foundation, for shopkeepers, for innkeepers, for restaurateurs, for our event contractors, and for so many individuals are friends now. We need to make it happen. It's no longer about us or each of our individual concerns. It's about a much bigger picture, and we can be an important part of an overall kickoff to coming back to living. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you guys. Is there anybody else wishing to speak? Yes, Stacy.
Just very short. I'm a resident and I would love to see you vote on road closure. I just think it'd be fantastic if we could get back to normal as soon as possible, using as many precautions as we can, but definitely put that show back on, please.
Thank you, Stacy. So anybody else wishing to speak?
Judy Refuerzo?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, my question is, and this is a question to council or to Ashley and to Paul, is if the council goes ahead and recommend road closures, does it mean that there's, how many cars are involved in this road closure? And does that mean that still has to be that many cars? Or if there's, say, 150 cars on these road closures and COVID is starting to pick up again, can you have only 75 cars on these road closures? I mean, is there spacing? I mean, those are my kind of questions I would like you to talk about tonight, because the event is a good event, but I do want to be safe, and we have a lot less staff to put this on. And yeah, so those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. We'll get those answered once we're done with public input. Okay, is there anybody else wishing to speak? Last call.
Hello, this is Ashley Bennett Stoddard with Bennett Sculpture in Carmel, and I would just like to say that I'm hoping that the council considers this event to move forward, to start to be able to plan in a safe way. As a business owner in town, I believe that it's a very important event for our town in many different ways. And I think that we have a lot of very smart and wonderful people in this town that can figure out how to put it together the right way. So that's all I would like to say.
Thank you, Ashley. Richard Kreitman, you seem to have shown up rather aggressively here. What's up?
Aggressively?
Well, I see you bouncing back. You're half lit. I mean, physically.
To be clear, we're going to have, if we do the event, there'll be a couple of thousand people from all over the country, some of whom won't be vaccinated, some of whom will even have COVID. But we've had those people coming through town by the hundreds and by the thousands for months now, before there was a vaccine. And the number of cases in our village has been almost minimal, if not zero. So there is a risk, but the reward to the town is so enormous if we just enforce mask wearing during the event. And of course, we could be in the yellow tier, the state could say, do whatever you want. We don't know if it's going to be the case. But if we enforce masks, most of the visitors will be vaccinated. We insist they all wear masks. Our experience has been that it hasn't endangered our community. And just to keep that in mind, and as many of the speakers have said, this is just a conditional approval of street closures if it's possible to have the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. All righty, anybody else? Britt, what do you think?
I don't see anyone else. I thought there was someone with their hand raised, but they must have lowered it. So I think uh-oh.
Am I getting?
Mike
Mr.
Brown, if
Brown?
you'd like to speak, do it.
Mike Brown, I'm trying to get in.
Okay,
You're in.
go ahead, Mr. Brown.
You've made it.
Well, I didn't plan to call and speak on this issue, but it seemed to me when this was discussed by the council a couple of years ago, there was a question of a budget and wanting to see a budget from these people and where their monies were going. And
Mr. Brown,
Mike, you still there?
we lost you.
produce any kind of a budget to show where the money's coming in and where it's going out, which was a concern, once again, as I said, a couple of years ago at a council meeting. Okay, that's it.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else? All righty, seeing no one and hearing no one, I'm going to close the public comment period, bring it back to council for deliberation. There was a couple of questions asked. Judy Refuerzo asked questions of Paul and Ashley, and Mike Brown had a question regarding budget. Ashley?
So to answer Ms. Referzo's question, yes, the event organizer and we've talked about reducing the number of cars in order to better space them in the current footprint of the event as it has always been. That does mean, and there is, at some point, as has been brought up, if the event was expanded, you can maybe keep the number of cars and space them out. But we've talked about, again, reducing the number of cars and spacing them out a little bit better to keep people socially distanced. If we do anything smaller and we're including the same number of cars, it will condense people down. And if we reduce the number of cars, there's only so much reducing before. Again, as Doug and Jeannie stated, there's a point where, depending on what the state and the county are going to require, and what we require of them as event organizers to keep things safe for our community, where it's just too much. It's too many volunteers or too many staff needed, or where they will not be able to move forward with the event. That is a possibility. So, and then to answer Mr. Brown's question, the budget questions regarding Concours on the Avenue came up when we still had a grant program in place for special events. That is no longer the case. And requesting budgets of organizations is not part of the application process. That was tied in with the granting process.
Well said. Thank you. All right, council members. Carrie, you were the one who wanted a discussion on this. I think you've generated some pretty interesting dialogue. Appreciate that.
It's always good to have dialogue.
Exactly.
So our challenge is when this is, of course, a wonderful event. It's always been a great event. I've always supported this event. Unfortunately, we are in unique times with COVID. So, what are we doing to make sure that we do our due diligence to keep our community safe? And the big difference here is many of the concourse events are on private property, so it's easier to control crowds. It's very difficult to control the crowd coming to a city. I understand that the street closures have to be addressed in order for them to move forward. I like the contingency approach. Obviously, if we approve street closures and the state says you can only have 500 people in an outdoor event, that's not going to be on us. That's going to be on the medical public health director of whether it's the county and the state. So, I'm willing to approve some street closures, but it's going to be based on a contingency that the county and the state will allow. Right now, if we approve these street closures, they wouldn't have an event right now, according to Paul. So it really is a contingency issue for me.
Carrie, I think that was well said, contingent upon whatever the conditions develop or become. Bobby?
Yeah, I guess I have a question concerning this. Tonight, are we voting to authorize street closures? Are we voting to authorize Ashley and Chief Tomasi to work with organizers in case they do move ahead and want to have street closures? It's my understanding that we're not voting to close streets tonight or not close streets tonight. We're voting to allow Ashley and Paul to do their job. Is that correct?
Ashley?
So the request that I've made is no, it is the opposite of what you were thinking, Councilmember Richards. I am asking for the approval of the street closures in advance so that we can continue to work with the event organizers as we keep an eye on what the county and the state are doing in terms of large-scale special events. So as Doug and Jeannie said, we have these weekly conversations where we looked at what has changed since the last time we talked. How do we do those spacing out so that we can be as prepared as possible? And I'm not coming to you at the very last minute, the week before Car Week, asking for approval for street closures.
Oh, thank you.
I think that does help clarify, because what we're really looking at is, as Carrie said, contingent upon. But in order to know the parameters of what they can and can't work with, they do need to know that they have the authority, or they are authority to go ahead and work with these streets within the confines of the event. So I'm not uncomfortable moving forward tonight, but I do have a concern with the air of cooperation that I heard very clearly tonight from Doug and Jeannie, that they want to work with us. So I hope that, recognizing that flexibility was the word that we heard in the 3 other presentations tonight, that they're equally flexible as far as restaging this event if that needs to be. These aren't our rules that the health department's laying on us, but they are the rules we'll have to play by. So I do see Jeannie's head going north and south. I trust Doug's is doing the same. Jeff?
Thank you. Thank you, Doug and Jeannie, and everybody else for your comments tonight, and Doug and Jeannie for all the work that you've done in the past years, making this event a success and making it important to our town. I do agree with Carrie. I think we have a bit of an issue with safety. I'm concerned that, and I'll talk about how I feel about safety in a second. I'm concerned that if we just blanket issue the permit for the street closures, we'll end up in a situation where we don't have a plan to keep the public safe. And it'll turn into this sort of contentious back and forth between staff and the event organizers, and it'll just boil up and nobody will be happy. And I see Jeannie shaking her head, but I think the reality is right now that that's what it is right now. And I think that we don't, as of yet, have a safety plan. What I've heard from staff is that we have some hand washing stations, but what I've also heard from staff is that if this event were held now or even on June 15th, when the tiers are supposed to completely disappear and the concept of a yellow tier disappears from the vocabulary maybe forever, that the event that we have in front of us would basically be illegal. And I heard, I think maybe it was Richard, and you'll forgive me if I'm mistaken, that we should plan for the best. Well, I'm not sure that we should plan for the best. I think we should plan for what we think is going to happen, or where we might be someplace in the middle. And we should have a safety plan that addresses some of the concerns like mask wearing and physical distancing and whatever, while before we approve the street closures. So I'm not ready to move forward quite yet. I think I would be in a position to move forward next month if I heard from staff that they were satisfied with the safety plan, and I would give the Friedmans my assurance that that is what I feel, and that I would vote that way next month. But I think what I need to hear from staff, staff is responsible for the safety of our village. And I think what I personally need to hear is a message from staff to me that they're happy with the safety plan. And so my direction is that we need a safety plan, and I would like to see that before we approve the street closure. Some comments on the safety plan. I know Richard said that it hasn't, that we haven't had very many cases in the community. But I think what happens is, with these super spreader cases, and I think what we saw at the very beginning of the pandemic with the Boston Scientific event in Boston, is that you have an event and these people spread everywhere. We're not going to have cases in our community, or very many cases in our community, because almost everybody in our community is vaccinated. And I think that's probably not going to be true of the people that come into town. At least it looks like we're not going to get to that point, certainly not in the next few months. So my concern is for the people that are coming to town, and whether Carmel wants to be responsible for a super spreader event. If we find ourselves in the position of being, on the uptick of cases or something, and I'm not satisfied yet that we've met that condition. So what's important to me is that, I heard someone talk about security, and it's important to me that we not have volunteers enforcing security. It's important to me that we have paid people enforcing security, including people that have the ability to give out tickets. Having the CERT team, we've seen what happens when we unleash the CERT team or the VIPs on the public that have been drinking and they don't want to abide by the rules. We saw that all last summer at the beach with just complete mayhem. And so my feeling is that if we're going to have a security team, that we need to have some police presence and some determined volunteers that will actually make people put masks on. And I think that goes along with that. I think that one thing that would go along with that is appropriate signage at all of the entrance points to the event. Like, we are giving out tickets and we will eject you from the event if you're not wearing masks. I think that's, to me, those are the things that I've seen work. Carrie mentioned having fewer space, fewer roads closed, and my response to that is, I think there's some merit in that. My concern is that we would have the same number of cars over a fewer space, and if we're going the route of limiting the size of the event, I think it would be safer and easier to police if we had fewer cars over the same number of closed streets. I think that we're used to the same number of closed streets, and if we're going to have, and I'm just pulling these numbers out of the air, if we're going to have 75 cars instead of 100 cars, I think that it would be better to have 75 cars spread over 14 streets rather than 7 streets. And I know we have a lot more than 75 or 100 cars. So I'm not ready to proceed. I think that, I think the safety plan is important. And what I would like to see is it come back next month with something that staff is willing to endorse.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Karen?
Yes, I think it's important to remember that this is not an official city event. It's a private event held on public property. And we have a responsibility to our citizens to provide not just a safe event downtown, but not to expose our citizens to an unsafe event. And right now, if you just add up the 175 cars, and usually they come with 2 people, that's 350 people right there without volunteers. And then we have absolutely no idea how many thousand people will actually show up at this event. It could be a few hundred, it could be many thousand people who are on our street. And I'm very, very concerned that the ability to enforce masking and distancing will go right out the window the minute those hundreds or thousands of people show up. There are pros to this. It brings a lot of people downtown. There are cons to this. It brings a lot of people downtown. I think, it goes both directions. I've worked on the marathon for 20 some years, and we have had to cancel 2 events. One, the Salinas Valley Half Marathon was canceled a day before the event due to smoke. And then the Monterey Bay Half Marathon about a year and a half ago that was canceled literally the morning of the event due to smoke. It is not fun to have to cancel events, especially when people are already in town. And, right now we are at the mercy of a disease that knows no bounds. That being said, today, if we had to vote today on this event, it is not a legal event. It's a wonderful event. We want to have it, but we cannot hold an illegal event if the state says you cannot gather over 300 people or whatever their limit is. That's the difficulty I'm having is I understand the contingency issue, but the contingency issue would have to be if it's 300 people and you have 350 people going to show their cars, that's not okay, because that doesn't even take into consideration the attendees. So I just don't know how we can contemplate handling this or approving this today. We could probably approve the footprint, but the contingency would have to be based on what the public health departments say is viable for an event. And, we have to, it can't be, we think this many people are going to show up, we hope this many people don't show up. those numbers will be very definitive at the time based on whether the economy is even completely open. That the economy being open June 15th is based on the number of people who can get vaccinations within a 2-week period, so that it says there are plenty of vaccine available. And I believe it's also based on hospitalizations. We have no idea where we're going to be on that. Absolutely no idea right now. We hope for the best. We all want the economy to be open, but we just don't know. And I'm very uncomfortable without a safety plan, without definitive numbers that we know about, and just so much uncertainty. I also think if we do go ahead and the planning proceeds, that the event organizer should be responsible for a private security force to enforce those issues, and this should not fall on our Carmel Police Department. Extra garbage collection during the event, cleanup of the streets afterwards, consideration of the loss of sales tax revenue due to out-of-town sales and things being finalized in other places. We don't have a financial statement that I know of at this point. There's just a lot of uncertainties. Over the years, this event has grown and grown. It's become a really big thing. This disruption caused by the pandemic maybe is an opportunity to create a more sustainable event. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Chip, you've heard the discussion going on here. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, it's been a really healthy discussion, Council, and I really appreciate the Friedmans talking about team CODA that includes Ashley, because I know that Ashley and we, Paul and I, Chief Tomasi and I have both worked with the Friedmans for several years, and I just love to hear their willingness to work cooperatively, and I love everyone. We're all advocates of this event. I call it art on the street. It's just beautiful. It's a wonderful event. I think our cautiousness, our conservatism of Paul and myself and Ashley, in large part, is again to protect the villagers. It has to be our paramount thought. With that in mind, I think that, again, based on the Friedmans' willingness to work with us, why don't you give us until the June meeting to hash out what's going to happen. By that point in time, we should be in the yellow tier. Maybe we'll have more direction on these events of this scale from the state and from the county, and we can make a more educated decision. Because what I see is the council is embracing the concept of the event, but again, is looking at the contingencies, looking at the valid concerns about having an event in the same format that we've had last time, prior to the pandemic, without knowing what's going to happen in the future, sir. So that would be based on your discussion, and again, everyone's willingness to help out here, kind of our revised recommendation.
Thank you, Chip. Bobby, you had your hand up. Did you have something else?
So you said a revised recommendation. Is that because your first recommendation was to move forward with authorizing the street closures, Chip?
Yes, sir. It was probably the shortest agenda report Ashley's ever written. We made a recommendation to conditionally approve the street closure. And again, the conditions are a lot of the things that the council and the Friedmans are talking about tonight with those unknowns, Mr. Richards. So yes, sir, that's a correct.
That was the original recommendation. And then we heard a lot of public comment tonight. And as counselors, that's our duty, right? Is to come in, listen to staff recommendation, listen to public comment, and have dialogue amongst ourselves. Right?
Yes, sir. Correct. Yes, sir.
So with that, and after hearing public comment tonight, I would be more than comfortable moving forward with authorizing the closure.
All righty, that sounds like a motion. Is there a second? Seems like it fails for lack of a second. Is there an alternate motion? Carrie, you're the one who stirred it. Jeff?
Jeff's got his hand up.
Yep, I got him, Jeff.
I would make a motion that we continue this item until to the June meeting with direction to staff to develop a safety plan, to develop a safety plan with the applicants that they're comfortable with and bring it back to the council for approval at that time.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
All right, under discussion then. Any other one? Anybody want to? It's been cussed and discussed quite a bit. For me, I'm supportive of the event. I always have been, and I think that's what I'm hearing. But I do understand the concerns about the unknown, and so for that reason, I'm not saying no to this event at all. And although Jeannie's been shaking her head east-west a lot, I don't think this is us saying no to the event. I think this is just us wanting to be sure that the public is going to be safe. And in the spirit of cooperation, which I heard very decidedly tonight out of the Freedmans, I'd like to go ahead and make sure that we can move forward in a cooperative manner. So I think this motion is good. It's well intended. I think it covers the concerns that I've heard tonight, so I'm going to support it. Jeff?
I would just say thank you, Dave. I think you summarized that excellently. I think that's everybody's, certainly my intent in making the motion was that the Freedmans and the city work together, and I'm fully expecting to support the event with a good safety plan at the next meeting.
All right, anybody? Karen, briefly?
Yes, I do have a question. Maybe the Freedmans can answer. How many people are signed up for the event right now to exhibit? And
Karen, I don't know if that's necessarily consistent with the motion. These are questions that will get asked and answered during the process. I mean, I do think that we have a motion on the floor that's specific to direction. Inviting the public in to comment more would be a little inappropriate, I think. I'm not trying to cut you off necessarily, but I do want to stay on topic here. We have a motion, we have a second under discussion. I mean, I don't see the point in bringing up the Freedmans, frankly. All right, that noted then, I'll call the question. Britt, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Barron?
Yes.
Ferlito?
no.
Tice?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards?
No.
Mayor Potter?
Yes.
Okay, it passes with 3 yes votes, with Councilmember Ferlito and Mayor Pro Tem Richards voting no.
All righty, that noted, let's move on then to the actual orders of business tonight. We have an update on paid parking. The staff report's with us. Brandon Swanson is going to lead us. Chip, did you want to lead it in? Okay, Brandon, there's some recommendations to staff from staff on possible directions we can augment that or delete some if we want.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Just to be sure you can see the full screen. Great, I see some heads nodding there. Yep. Okay, so thank you, Brandon Swanson here with the Community Planning and Building Department. Here for just a brief presentation and update on paid parking and to receive some direction from the City Council. As you recall, previous direction received on March 2nd, we had a few buckets that we as staff, the famous Paul Tomasi, Chief Tomasi and myself have been working on since then. The first bucket is priority paid parking zone. So this was staff took away direction of Ocean Avenue from Junipero to Monteverde and the Del Mar parking lot. These are the 2 areas to explore as a priority for implementing, or at least looking at what paid parking would look like there. Bucket 2 was other paid parking programs. So this is looking into construction vehicles and residential zones, what sort of program may be able to be put in place for parking permits and things like that, and resident parking in paid zones. So in the areas, for say on Ocean, is there a way for residents to be able to maintain their parking permits that they'd be valid on the street so they're not having to pay for parking? The third bucket were additional areas of consideration. This was the conversation about Sunset Center North Lot and Vista Lobos, converting those possibly from from free parking to paid parking as part of the program with Ocean Avenue and Del Mar. So this is staff's proposed approach based on just really early conversations between the chief and myself. This is really the meat of what we're here for today, is to see if the council is okay with this approach. First would be to meet with consultants to begin our research, to see what technology's out there, low visibility of equipment, things like that. Develop our plan for Ocean Avenue, develop our plan for the Del Mar lot, which will include some early discussions with the Coastal Commission staff. We definitely don't want to get too far down the road without having their input. I've been there and it's not a good way to go, in my opinion. Develop the resident permit system that we talked about, and develop some construction vehicle permit systems. So these would all be early on development, but really starting to frame out what those programs might look like. And through that process, we can start to create some revenue projections to bring back to the council, which will help inform your decisions as we bring early frameworks of those programs to you. The one note here, as I said, there was some additional considerations about perhaps converting Sunset North and Vista Lobos to paid lots as part of the program. Staff's recommendation on that is to actually leave those as free. We feel that it would be better served, especially if we're going to be creating paid parking along Ocean and Del Mar, to leave those as free. It lowers the impact on the surrounding neighborhoods because there will be closer free parking rather than pushing people out of the neighborhoods. However, if the council still does want to pursue that, if the council still does want to pursue that, we could look at options for free business permits if it's still desired to do some sort of a hybrid program. But again, staff's recommendation is to leave Sunset and Vista Lobos free. So what are the next steps here? That's really what we're here for tonight, is to get some council direction. Should we begin our work plan as proposed, like I just ran through, or would you like to see some sort of modification to that approach? Our goal and hope is to return to you in June or July with an update on our progress. Some of those skeleton programs, perhaps be able to start to explain those, some revenue projections, and presentation on some of the equipment that we can find out there, and then receive additional direction as we go along. Staff's goal in all of this, is to bring the council and the public along as much as possible, step by step through this process, so we have buy-in from the beginning as we go along. So by the time we all get to some sort of implementation or not, there has been the opportunity over and over again for people to participate. So with that, we are available. Like I said, the chief is here as well. We are available for questions and look forward to your direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Brandon, questions of Brandon at this time, or the chief, or our staff in general?
Yes.
Jeff.
Thank you, Dave. Brandon, on the page of your proposal, I think it's the third page. So a couple of questions about this. One, by Ocean Avenue, do you mean the downtown district or just Ocean Avenue?
The downtown, it's really just on Ocean Avenue. That's where we as staff would like to recommend starting a similar program to before, where it's each block there's some sort of paid parking, but really focusing on that central Ocean Avenue corridor. That's what we took away from City Council. But again, that's why we're here. If the council would like us to expand that initial program development outside of the corridor of Ocean, we can certainly do that.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we can talk about that after during public comment. That wasn't my remembrance of that, but that's fine. And then when you say, so you have on here 4 develops and 1 create. Are those prioritized? Like, is that the way that staff thinks that, is this like, you're going to develop a plan for Ocean Avenue or downtown first, and then you're going to develop a plan for Del Mar, and then you're going to develop the resident system? Or are these like, is it a priority, or are these just bullet points?
That's a great question. Thank you, Councilmember Barron. Generally, these are in order of how quickly I would guess we can get these things to a point where they come back to the council. So the meeting with consultants would happen very quickly. That's something that can be done very quickly. Developing a plan for Ocean Avenue, if we just stick with that corridor, is going to be a little bit easier, definitely not an easy task, but a little bit easier than the Del Mar lot, because we have to throw in the additional conversation with the Coastal Commission staff and mitigations and things like that. The resident permit system and the construction vehicle permit system were, at least from our takeaway, were sort of like secondary to the main program. And so that's why I have those next. And then the revenue projections, that really could fit in probably earlier. But really, we want to try to figure out what the plan looks like before we try to figure out what kind of revenue it will create.
Yeah, I was asking the question because I'm a little bit confused about the resident permit system, because I thought that a resident permit system would be part of the downtown parking permit system. Like those are like, it's an exception to the rule or a facet of the program. And maybe I'm missing something. Does the resident permit system, do those 3 words mean something else?
No, sir, you are correct. It would be part of the overall implementation plan for, call it Ocean Avenue. I was looking at more of the very early construct of Ocean Avenue. Where are we putting meters at? How do they work? But certainly, we can do that as part of the Ocean Avenue plan. So I think that there is some tie between those, no doubt. So you make a good point.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Karen?
Yes. Do you mean on the develop a construction vehicle permit system for just the central commercial district, or do you mean out into the residential? I don't quite understand where that is going and where it came from, actually.
Thank you. It was, I believe it was, I don't want to pin it on any one council member, but I did hear it. I know for sure in the last meeting that the concept was in the residential area, because there is a glut of construction vehicles, sometimes stacked up, making it difficult to get through. Perhaps there's a way for staff to explore some sort of construction vehicle permit that would happen when building permits are applied for.
Wow.
Early on in the process. Thanks, Britt. Early on in the process, so that we potentially can limit the number through carpooling or things like that. But that was the concept, is in the residential area.
Any other, Karen, did I answer your questions? Yes, so. Is there any other,
Yes.
are there any other questions?
I said thank you.
Okay, sorry. Are there any other questions? So Brandon, I'm wondering about the meet with consultants. Consultants always means cost to me. Is there a cost associated with bringing on a consulting team? And is that going to be something we're going to have to struggle with budgetarily?
The early on consultant work that I believe we'll need to do will be free, more or less, because you wouldn't probably be surprised by the number of emails I got from folks that want to tell us all about what's out there these days after this last meeting we had. So I'll be able to do some very early research. Once we really get to the part of maybe wanting to do some traffic analysis and things like that, where it takes some technical savvy, we may need to bring in a paid consultant. But this early on stages, I just want to really dig into what's out there in the world right now, because it's a different world than when we tried this before.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions before I go out to the public? Seeing none, I'll open up for public comment. It's an opportunity for anyone in the public to comment on this item. 3-minute limitation on the testimony. Please state your name for the record.
Remember, *6 will unmute your device if you're attending via telephone. And if you'd like to speak, if you go to the bottom of your screen and click unmute. Same area under reactions. If you click on the happy face, you'll get raise hand. Mayor, I know there's a slight delay, but I don't know that it's as long as it used to be. So I'm not seeing,
All right.
I'm not seeing anyone. Brian Kane, his video just came on, but I don't know if he's trying to speak. Nope, he just turned it off. Okay, thank you.
All righty, well, I'll close the public comment period, then bring it back to council for direction. Council members, you or others? Jeff? Jeff, you're muted. Oh, Jeff. Britt, can you unmute him?
Hey, I'm sorry about that. I was having a problem. My apologies. So
Jeff, if I could beforehand, Richard Kreitman has abruptly decided he wants to speak.
I lost the feed there for a moment. So I have something. Yes. Okay. So as you know, parking downtown is one of my favorite topics. It's a passion. So first, I believe these piecemeal and half-hearted partial measures, such as just putting it on Ocean Avenue, Del Mar, are a waste of time. They were the last time. The problem is downtown, where there are not enough spaces for paying customers, whether they're visitors or residents. And any paid parking solution for Carmel should cover the whole downtown area, plus the city-owned lots, and included, when completed, the new parking structure in the North Sunset lot that paid parking will easily pay for. And any downtown paid parking system should minimize the negative effect on our streetscape, maximize the parking experience and satisfaction of residents and visitors, and generate as much money as possible. So the available smart parking technology out there in the world, all these people who are contacting Brandon, there are a lot of companies out there. these systems can do all this. And the only systems we should be considering would employ pavement sensors, discreetly placed compact parking terminals, no parking meters, please. Some number labels on the curves, and then software and cell phone apps, which can include permits for local residents, for area residents, for business owners and employees. It's all doable. And speaking of kiosks, those huge machines in 2014 were ridiculous. And I was one of the first locals to pay for parking at 11:45 a.m. on Monday, December 2nd, the first day they were in operation. I put money in one of the monsters. And then we went and rang the noon bell for the first time. It was an important day for me. The singular advantage of these systems is that once it knows who's paying for the parking spot, the charges accrue until you pull away. It's so convenient. And with permits for residents and business people, we could, for example, still provide 2 hours free. And after that, you charge the going rate. No permit holder or app user would ever get a parking ticket. And these apps, as you may have read about them, they direct incoming drivers to empty parking spaces. They can inform people with the app who are just thinking of coming to Carmel what the parking situation is. They direct drivers to where they park their car when they forget where they park their car, which would be useful for many of us. And you can do text advisories. And about what that going rate is, these are completely manipulatable. Surge pricing is part of these systems. So Tuesday and Thursday of a normal car week, you could charge $10 an hour for downtown spaces. And on quiet weekdays off season, a text message go out to all local permit holders that parking is free downtown. So my recommendation is that we decide as a community what would be the ideal system for this unique village we love, spec it out and see which company, and all these companies are eager, can do it best. And I would love to work with Brandon and whoever else is working on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. All right, I'll reclose the public comment period and bring it back to council for direction. Remembering that this is direction only. We can do it
Mr.
via
Mayor,
consensus.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I believe you actually had one other hand raised. Looks like Alex Dallas raised their hand during that public comment.
All right, sorry.
I apologize.
Sorry, Mayor Potter, council member Steve Dallas, and my dog Nala. I appreciate what Brandon and your staff has brought. I think it's so easy, so precise, such a good start. I don't think you need to complicate things like Mr. Kreitman said. We went down this path a few years back, like he said, in 2014. Keep it very simple. You as a council can always make it a lot larger later down the road. But this is a very simple process. And with Mr. Swanson and Chip and Paul and all the previous work that has been done on paid parking, I think you'll have some really good starting direction. I applaud you for bringing in Del Mar because we need the money for that beach area. And I applaud you for going after the daytime visitor. There's not one resource that we have in our city right now, except that would be paid parking to go down to get the daytime visitor to pay their fair share. So I appreciate Mr. Swanson's quick attention of easy to understand in that one slide that you had up, Brandon, that any layperson could understand. And again, Paul has more studies, I'm sure, from previous chiefs that could show this council of what the money generates for you that you can spend it on down the road. And I know in your previous discussion, again, you were talking to the Coastal Commission about putting down to the North Dunes, the pathway, the habitat. There's a lot of stuff that can go down there on that beach. And I hope you all move in that direction and don't make it too big. Start small. And if it works out well, you can move another street or another block very easily on a agenda item in the future meetings. But thank you for your time.
Oh, no.
Thank you, Steve. All right, I'll ask again, is there anybody else wishing to testify under the reopened public comment period?
No, forget it. I quit.
Britt?
Here's someone speaking. I just don't know where it's coming from.
Richard.
Oh, okay. I think you're probably okay. Then again, I was wrong the last time.
All right, last and final closure. All righty, so we'll bring it back to council for direction. Council members? We can throw anything at the wall and we'll decide if it sticks later. Jeff?
Thank you. So I think the easiest question for me is to, I do agree with staff that we should leave Sunset and Vista Lobos free. I think there are two objectives. For me, there are two objectives with paid parking. One is to raise money. And I think that's the laudable and original goal that prompted Councilmember Tice to bring it up. And the second goal really dear to my heart is to try and manage the traffic downtown. And I think that by having sort of a paid core in the middle of downtown, which for me would include Ocean and some of the surrounding streets, maybe 6th and 7th and some of the more popular side streets, Dolores and whatever to be determined. I think that would really alleviate the traffic congestion downtown and allow the workers to park sort of on the outskirts of downtown without going into the residential area. And I think that would include those parking lots. I think someone has mentioned that there's a parking lot at the theater, at the Forest Theater, which is available, which might be in use. I know that workers park on Mountain View already. I see that all the time when I'm up there. So that would be my preferences for that first question that staff asks. I think it would be helpful for staff. My own view is it would be helpful for staff if we prioritize these projects. IC3, Ocean, and Del Mar, and the construction vehicle permit system, and I think those other two things, resident permit systems and revenue projections, I think those fit underneath each of those three projects. And I think they're components of them, and I think that they should be built into the projects to start. So I don't think we should put parking meters on Ocean Avenue, for example, and part of downtown without considering how residents would be able to park there for free. I don't think we need to sort of get off on the wrong foot with regards to the paid parking in either location. So if that makes sense. So I think it's important, for me, it would be important to sort of give direction to staff to prioritize those three things. My preference, I'll just start off. My preference would be to do Ocean first and Del Mar maybe right after that. So maybe option 1 and then option 1.1, and then do the construction vehicle permits third. But I think all three of these things are great options, and I would go along with whatever the will of the council was in sort of prioritizing those. I think they're very good pluses and minuses, mostly pluses for each of them.
So Jeff, just for me, I'm not prepared tonight to prioritize any of them at the moment, just because I don't have enough background on them. Not saying you're wrong at all. I just don't have enough knowledge of them right now. For example, on the case of the Sunset Center paid parking versus not paid, I don't know quite what the rationale was for taking it out when they did the experimental program, and it failed and never got put back the way it was. It must have worked before. Why doesn't it work now? So those are just questions of mine that I'm curious about. Paul, did you want to say something?
I could answer that for you if you want, Mayor.
Okay.
The rationale was in the Walker study. They said it's not rational to charge people to park on the outskirts of town and then have free downtown, because you won't have anybody parking in your lot if there's available spots. They'll even drive around the block 14 times to look for a spot rather than park and pay. So when we installed the parking meters downtown, their recommendation was to take out the pay parking to provide free parking on the outskirts of town, which makes more sense. That way, if you can't find a spot downtown because all the meters are full, it's an opportunity to park for free and walk a block. And then when the meters got pulled out because the project collapsed, it was never proposed to put the pay parking back in the north lot. So it just never happened. That's just a little bit of the history of it.
Yeah, and so I never read the Walker report. I'm at a disadvantage there also. So Jeff, I think you probably make sense with what you're saying, but there may be some other things that get added in there. So if staff wanted to take your direction, and I can go ahead and say, here's how we would prioritize and why, that would be fine under direction. But for me to vote one up or down tonight, I wouldn't be comfortable with that. That's just my opinion. Carrie, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. One other point about Sunset is we were trying to get employees and owners, business owners, to park outside of the business district in a free parking. So that was the other hopeful benefit to having Sunset Center free. So so that's number one. I really like the direction the staff has proposed here. You know, the reason we need to get on Del Mar is because it's going to take a little longer to get that going because the Coastal Commission component to that. I do kind of like starting small, but having a system that can expand to the entire business district. I think we're going to probably get to that point, but trying to start small, I understand trying to test something out first. So I'm good with what the staff has proposed. I really think it's important to get the Del Mar aspect of paid parking to the Coastal Commission as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Karen, Bobby, either one of you?
Yes, I agree with Carrie about the Del Mar area. I think because of the unknown Coastal Commission buy-in, it's important to get going on that, because if it turns out they're not going to entertain that in any way, shape, or form, we need to know that sooner than later. I'm confused why you would just have paid parking on Ocean itself and not on the side streets, because I just don't see how that would do anything but move people onto the side streets more. So that confuses me a little. I like the idea of the whole central commercial area being a paid parking. I do think it's important to keep the Vista Lobos and Sunset Center open for now to encourage, once we establish where the paid parking is going to be, to get the employees to go there. But I would imagine that if the employees show up at 8 or 9 o'clock to go to work, they're going to park on Lincoln and Monteverde and Dolores and not on Ocean, but that doesn't really move them out of the central district far enough to benefit our visitors that are coming. And it still creates that every 2 hour car chaos, the moving of the cars every 2 hours. It's sort of like musical chairs. So I think if you're going to do it, it should be the whole central business district myself.
All right. Bobby?
Yeah, thanks for the report. Happy with everything that's been put out. But what I would like to see actually move forward quick is the develop a permit for the construction vehicles. I think that is has really burdened this city and its residents, and it's probably a pretty quick and easy fix. And I think most of our residents would agree to that, and there wouldn't be much controversy. So I'd love to see us move forward with that the construction truck permit plan somehow to get that off and running. Thank you.
We can all agree with that coming from the construction industry. So Brandon, I see you taking copious notes here. Are you getting direction? One of the things I'd like to do is I'd like to have some discussion about continuing the look at getting an RFP out for the development of the north lot at the Sunset Center in a public-private partnership, where we would, in exchange for the development of 2 levels of parking, it wouldn't even be subterranean necessarily. If you look at the topography between Mission and San Carlos, it's pretty significant there, where we would go ahead and allow the development rights for the first 2 floors with the right kind of development with a private sector person. We would get the parking as a city for nothing in exchange for the value of that land, which is very, very expensive. Honestly, it's a real asset. And I can't imagine that the people that are in the construction and development industry wouldn't look at an opportunity to go ahead and provide the parking we need if we got the right kind of development we wanted on the 1st and 2nd floor. Perhaps an adjunct to the Sunset Center, perhaps a affordable housing component. We might be able to get arena numbers covered, those kind of things. I'm not saying I'm wed to the idea, but I do think it's worth exploring. So, Brandon, am I clear?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and I think so far, I've definitely got some great direction. The only thing I would ask for possibly a little more clarification, perhaps a straw poll of some sort among the council members, is whether staff should pursue just the Ocean or look at a broader commercial district as we move on to this next step, sort of the beginning to frame. So I heard arguments and conversations on both sides of that coin. So perhaps if the council could provide staff some direction there, that would be very helpful.
How about a show of hands and those in favor of broadening it beyond the confines of ocean only? Hands up.
No.
Unanimous.
Well, never mind.
There you go. Yeah, really. So much for your reading the tea leaves. All right. Is there anything else? Karen?
Yes, Mayor, since you talked about an RFP for Sunset, would you bring that forward on another agenda, please?
Well, it's a parking related issue. I mean, I'm happy to go ahead and have it separate, but I would like to have some more discussion about what it would look like.
Well, since it really wasn't agendized, I thought maybe it would be good to do it officially, but if you consider it under parking, that's fine with me too.
Yes, there seems to fit. So who else had the hand up? Somebody else did. Jeff, did you have a hand up?
Yeah, I would like to say that I'm okay with whatever order, the council wants to do with respect to the sort of the three programs with the residential stuff. It's completely fine with me, whatever the order is. I'm still a little concerned that we've given staff too many eggs in that basket, and we're going to have slow progress on three things. We're going to have parallel progress, but kind of slow on three things rather than serial progress one after the other on the three things. Like one thing, whether it's construction trucks and then Del Mar and then downtown or whatever order is. And honestly, I could go with whatever order. I'm not really ambivalent, but I just want to make sure that we make sort of discrete progress with this parking, and so we see something next month or the month after, and we don't see all three things together 6 months from now. That's my only concern to staff. And so if staff is happy that you have enough direction to do that, I'm okay.
Thank you. I've been taking, as the mayor pointed out, I have been taking copious notes here. The one thing I sort of inferred here is that when the chief and I come back in June or July, we have sort of our menu now. I think we've really defined what the menu is here. We'll do a little bit more work down each of those roads, and then we can come back with a suggested sort of priority. So it's on the agenda to talk priorities if the council would like that, and then we can really put our horsepower behind the ones that are priority.
And Brandon, perhaps under the heading of a show of hands, general consensus, which is redundant, is the fact that I did think I heard opinions that perhaps we should be looking more aggressively, or at least get to the Coastal Commission regarding the Del Mar parking. Is there a show of hands on consensus on that one? Okay, we got a unanimous, sort of unanimous. Jeff kind of. Okay. All right. Okay. So staff, I think we've got direction on this. I appreciate the input. I appreciate the public testimony. Before we go on to the next item, why don't we take a brief 10-minute bio break? How does that sound? All right, good. All right. So we will return then at 7:10. Does that work? Yeah, that'd be right. 7:10 it is. Thank you. All righty, it appears to be 7:10. As promised, we will reconvene in open session here or continue our meeting. The next item is consideration of a resolution authorizing the city administrator to execute a lease agreement with GT MobileNet of California Limited Partnership, DBA Verizon Wireless, and a memorandum of building and roof top lease agreement. Brian Pierick, City Attorney, would you like to take the lead on this and explain why we're here and what we're doing?
Yes, I'll be glad to do that, Mayor. The item before the City Council this evening is solely for the consideration of the lease agreement with Verizon to utilize a defined space on top of the Sunset Center. The city would be entering into this lease agreement as a property owner, not as a permitting authority. In order for the wireless equipment to be placed on Sunset Center, Verizon must still complete historic review and design review, subject to any federal or state limits on the city's permitting authority. I should add that the matter before the council is only the lease for Verizon to use the Sunset Center as a potential cell site. Any applications for cell sites on utility poles, such as on Carmelo, would be reviewed under the city's permitting process. No action on any utility pole sites is before the council tonight. With regards to the background on this, that is set forth in the staff report. I will mention that Verizon Wireless had previously submitted to the city an application back in March of 2019 for cell facilities at 5 locations. Those are identified in the staff report, sites 1 through 5. Site 1 was San Antonio 1 northwest of 10th. Site 2 was San Antonio 3 southeast of 13th. Site 3 was 10-1 northwest of Dolores. Site 4 was Lincoln northeast of 12th. And Site 5 was Mission 2 southwest of 12th. So there were 5 cell sites that were considered back in 2019. The Planning Commission denied those applications. Verizon filed an appeal, and the council upheld the Planning Commission decision. Since that time, Verizon has presented for consideration of the council alternative sites, which would reduce the number of cell sites within the city from 5 down to 2. These are identified on page 2 of the staff report. The first site, the one that was on San Antonio, 1 northwest of 10th, that is proposed to be relocated to Carmelo Street between 8th and 9th Avenues. The site 2 that I mentioned, San Antonio 3 southeast of 13th, that would be proposed to be relocated to the county jurisdiction. And then sites 3 and 4 that I identified are proposed for the Sunset Center. And then the final one, site 5, was going to be proposed to be relocated to the county's jurisdiction. Attached to the staff report, you will find a resolution as recited by the mayor in his opening comments with respect to the lease and the memorandum of the building and a rooftop lease agreement, as well as the lease agreement itself and the memorandum. The lease proposes a lease payment to the city of $1,000 per month. The initial term of the lease is 5 years, and there are automatic extensions for 4 additional 5-year terms unless Verizon terminates the lease upon 3 months' notice. There's some additional points I'd like to mention. Those include the question about power. What happens if there's a power failure? Verizon is proposing that the primary backup in the event of a power failure would be the use of batteries, and potentially if there was an emergency and the batteries should no longer have a charge, that a diesel fuel power generator could be brought onto the site. This would be in an extraordinary emergency situation where it may be appropriate to continue the facility. With respect to the facility itself, the benefits of the design are that it does avoid major disturbances and reconstruction to the rooftop area using an antenna that measures only 24 inches in height. So I did see some of the public comments that referenced this as a cell tower. This is not a cell tower, it's 24 inches. So it's not what some folks might think of as a tower. I should also mention that in terms of the city's authority with respect to the development of wireless facilities, there was passed by the FCC back in September of 2018, something called a small cell order, and that has that has reduced the city's traditional level of discretion when regulating wireless infrastructure. With regard to health concerns, I did see some comments on that as well. Let me mention that Section 332 of the Telecommunications Act reserves authority to the FCC to regulate and set radio frequency, or sometimes referred to as RF, exposure safety standards. And for that reason, the city is preempted from making decisions on the basis of health concerns related to RF. So those are the major points for consideration. I'm certainly available to answer questions if there are any from the council.
Thank you, Brian, for that presentation. Are there any questions of Brian at this moment by council members? Karen?
Yes, Brian. Can you explain why we are seeing a lease before this actually goes through Historical Resources and the Planning Commission? That was a question that came up from several constituents.
Yes, because in order for the applications to be considered, Verizon would need to have the ability to locate this facility on the lease. So the lease needs to come before the applications are considered.
And the second question, if it wasn't put on the roof, was there an alternative at Sunset to be on some sort of pole or faux tree or whatever? Or was it always just on the roof, and was that due to height?
Well, I think the purpose of it being on the roof is that it is, as a matter of fact, I should mention, which I didn't in my earlier comments, there's already a cell facility on the roof at Sunset, which is a Sprint cell facility. So this would just be a continuation of the existing use. It would just be another cell site. And the answer to your question is there wasn't any consideration given that there have it being on a pole at the center. This one would be shrouded, as we indicated, and so it would there would be minimal. It would minimize the visual impact.
Karen, does that answer it?
Well, I have another question.
Sure.
And at this time, there would be no opportunity for other ones to be placed on the roof. This would be the one and done.
Well, certainly other providers can file their applications and they would be considered on their merits at the time. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know physically how many would fit there. I don't know what the load would be to the roof, if that would be a problem or not. So I think we'd have to take those on a case-by-case basis.
Karen, is that it? Okay, I'm going to take that as a yes.
That's fine, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions by council members? All right, I'll open it up to the public. Is there anybody in the public wishing to testify on this item? Please come forward, state your name for the record. And there's a 3-minute limitation on that testimony. Welcome.
Yes, I'd like to, if I'm getting unmuted.
Yep, you're on, Mike.
Go ahead.
Mike Brown. Can I speak?
Floor is yours.
The floor is mine. Thank you. I have some questions here that concern me. One is, why can Verizon get out of this agreement in 5 years? And the way I read it, I don't see where the city can get out of it, though. We're stuck then for the extensions and everything that they might take. And to be extended out to 20 or 25 years, that's a hell of a long time, I think, to commit the city to. My understanding at the October meeting that Verizon was to go to the county first and get the approval from them for the different towers. They were going to take out some of the towers that were going to be in Carmel and put them instead in the county. Now, the understanding at the time that I drew from the meeting was that then they would go to the county first and get permission from them before coming then to the city to get this permit. apparently Sprint has already been given permission here, and there's other companies like AT&T and others that are going to want to come in. So what's the rooftop of Sunset going to look like when you get done? Even though, as the attorney just pointed out to us, they're not massive, as I was afraid of. The monthly payment of $1,000 is nothing. You can't even rent a house in Carmel and put a tower on top of it for $1,000. I know in South County, for instance, there are towers down there that are on people's properties are paying way more than $1,000. The different companies that are down there are paying way over $1,000 a month to use the property with these. And in this case, the ones I'm familiar with are towers, though. That is a point. I guess the aesthetic look of Sunset is not going to be bothered, if I understand correctly, the attorney, his comments he just made. But one last thing I'd like to state, if I may, is that the attorney did at the October meeting said that this does not obligate the city to approve any cell sites. And yet, the way I'm reading this thing, it's approving. It's asking the city manager to put together a contractual agreement then with.
Mr. Brown, did we lose you?
Mike, I think your 3 minutes may be expiring.
Yeah, I'll go silent.
I've got 3 seconds, okay?
All right, is there anybody else wishing to speak on this item?
Looks like Brian Kane has his hand raised.
All right now, buddy. Yes, thank you. Sorry, 1 second. Hey, Lily, give me just a couple minutes, buddy, and I'll come out and help you. Just give me a couple minutes and I'll come out and help you. Not right now. Sorry about that. Thank you all for taking the time. I apologize for that. Chatty 5-year-old. My name is Brian Kane. I live on Carmelo, right around the intersection with Ocean, with my wife, Elizabeth. We've lived here we've owned our house here for about 4 years, lived here for about a year. We're sending our son to school here next year. And I understand there was a comment made that you could not make decisions here based on any health-related issues, but I did want to highlight for the commission that my wife, Elizabeth, and I, in 2010 and 2011, so for 2 years, lived in a building which had a cell tower in it in San Francisco, which we actually didn't realize until the time we were coming to the tail end of our stay there. And I wish we had realized it earlier, but about 5 or 6 years later, my wife was diagnosed with, at the age of 34, with a 1-year-old, was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer that had spread to her liver. And while it is impossible to determine what the cause of that was, the timing of when we lived in that house aligns with when her doctors believe the cancer started to form. So again, while it's impossible to determine, it is certainly on a list of a few things that doctors have determined is suspicious for having contributed to her cancer. And so I just feel strongly that, having listened to this conversation, and I appreciate all the work that you do on our behalf, the concern that the commission has for the safety and health and well-being of the villagers, that we would then potentially expose them to something that is suspicious of having significant carcinogenic effects, and not something that is suspicious and is going to be there for a week or a month or even a year. This is going to be permanent. It is going to be a slippery slope and open up the door for other carriers to begin to build cell towers and more concentrated frequencies in the area. And I think given the concern that you have for the health and well-being of the villagers, I think it would run totally counter to that to allow them to build these sites here. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian, for your testimony. Is there anybody else wishing to speak?
Hello,
Yes.
Mayor.
Sue.
Go ahead, Sue.
Yes, This is Sue McLeod. I think some of you have seen the memo I wrote, and I just want to jump off of the previous comments, and that is on page A4 of the whatever you want to call it, the attachments with all the schematics and so forth. And as Mike Brown said, the tower, so to speak, maybe isn't something we can't live with, but it is. It's a historic building, and when you look at it, that thing that rises 2 feet up in the air is apropos of nothing. The one that's already there with Sprint was built into the design of the part over the stage door. So it looks like it's a V that goes up over right at the top of the arch there. And in this case, there is also attached to if you look at the upper right-hand picture, you will see that there is a cylinder that's going to be above the ridge line of the auditorium, and then attached to it is something that I don't know what the dimensions are, but it's got 2 electrical somethings in each side, and I don't know what those are, and that is above the stage. Right above the performing stage. So it goes back to what I said in my memo is my concern about the isolation of whatever this presents to the acoustics and electrical things that we might have in Sunset to make Sunset work. And do they have right to come in on their own and something happens and we have no idea what they did? I mean, it's fraught with a problem. And, you're talking to the person who suggested they look into this, but this has turned into sort of something that I think is got some real serious issues to be solved before you vote on it to go forward. And I would say that that's the really key thing.
Thank you, Sue. Appreciate the testimony. Anybody else wishing to speak? No shyness here.
We've got someone, Lisa Atty and Judy Refuerzo.
All right. Either one of you would like to step forward, I'd appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Lisa Addy. I'm not sure, Brian, if I should speak now. I represent Verizon Wireless as their outside attorney at a firm, McGuire Woods, and I worked on the lease with Brian and the city's outside counsel at Telecom Law Firm. And I just wanted to address, thank you for letting us be here tonight. Just a couple of the comments on
Lisa, if I could interrupt you, I'm sorry. My suggestion would be perhaps we wait for the public to finish their comments because there may be others.
All right. I'll wait for everyone to go and I'll speak after. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks.
Judy?
Quite frankly, I'd rather have Lisa speak first so I know what I'm up against. So if you wouldn't mind to let her finish, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to allow, since this is under the applicant's portion of it, I think she'd have a chance to rebut. Brian, what do you think?
Well, I think it would make more sense to have the rest of the public speak as to what their concerns are so that they could be addressed either by me or Ms. Addy or
exactly.
It's your call, Mayor, but I'm just saying what the logic of it to me would be to know what the public's concerns are and then address them once we've heard them.
I agree. That's what I was trying to get to. Judy, please.
Okay, so first let me ask Brian 2 questions. Brian, you said we had to sign the lease, which is, could we not have signed a letter of intent instead of a lease?
So Judy, we're not going to get into a Q&A right now. You can ask your questions and Brian will take them under submission and answer the questions by any member of the public at the end of public testimony.
It's really strange that we're signing a lease that we are, that we're then going to take to public but we're already going to be committed to it. As Mike Brown said, the monetary amount is incredibly low. And the fact that I don't see increases every year in that, I'm bothered by that. And also, Brian, I'd like to know, so other cities have Marin to be one of the shining examples, have stopped cell towers from being put in their city. And so, and I thought we had a pretty good municipal code to help us. Are we currently rewriting our municipal code to make it easier for cell towers to come into Carmel-by-the-Sea? I think I've heard something like that. I'm disturbed by this whole process. I don't think it was handled well, as with any of our processes lately. I don't think, I personally wrote to Brandon Swanson. You guys all have read my email and all my points, but I wanted to be aware when this was coming. And here it is on special meeting, and you have a lease ready to sign tonight. That is dated tonight, not a draft of a lease, not anything else, a lease. And I'm just disturbed by this whole thing and how the council works. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Anybody else? Britt, what do you think?
I don't see anyone else. I'd like to remind, okay?
Yes.
Hi, Britt. Michael McWalter is on Scenic, has a comment if there's a space available.
Certainly, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thousands of doctors and scientists are calling a halt to 5G because of the increase in radio frequency radiation, which is a new kind of environmental pollution. And there's also research out there that says that 5G is going to increase ambient levels of wireless radio frequency radiation. Peer-reviewed research has demonstrated a myriad of adverse effects from wireless radio frequency radiation, including brain cancer, DNA damage, oxidative stress, immune dysfunction, altered brain development, damaged reproduction, sleep changes, hyperactivity, and memory damage. So we should stop this right now. If the health of our residents is number one, as it should be, let's just knock this off. We don't need this we don't need this radio frequency health hazard. It should be tabled immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else?
Jan Ramers, I had to mute you. You were still open, so you'll need to unmute.
You're on. All right.
Go ahead.
This is Nils Ramers. You've heard about health issues, whether we like it or not. We'll probably get sued by people claiming they were hurt by the transmission of the emission signals that they receive. Does the city have an agreement with Verizon that it will cover all legal costs of lawsuits regarding emission dangers?
Okay. Are you finished? Are you going to turn it over to me? Okay. Excuse me. Now I get my 3 minutes. Okay. I have questions. I have concerns. I've been reading what we've been reading of the people writing in who have a lot of concerns. And my questions are here clearly. I do not believe we need a lease. We do not need to combine ourselves to a lease agreement. And I fully understand the time constraints. I understand the pressures that you're being given. I understand that Verizon wants to move now. But there are questions. You received a great number of letters about them. We could do a memorandum of understanding. We could work with Verizon and let them know that we want to work forward. But Carmel has a process. And my process, I've got a list here. Recognize the letters of concern about the procedure. We've heard the cart before the horse, and that clearly is a situation now. Carmel-by-the-Sea has a history of protecting the visual impacts throughout time. My husband would grew up here. They couldn't have a TV antenna, and yet still many of their students went on to very fine careers and actually he didn't see TV till he was in high school, and he went to Stanford. So at least his freshman year, these things do happen. Carmel has controlled its environment. Process is key to this situation. We're missing the process that has gone through with all things going into Carmel, and the review process is essential here. Several letters have been submitted to include the excellent questions, and you need to consider them. I recognize that there needs to be some action, and going forward with the community boards would be the first step to find that action and allow the community to respond and fully understand it. I only saw that this meeting was happening because very small article in the Pine Cone, and I happened to see it. Signing a lease is not necessary at this juncture. There are other ways that we can legally address working with Verizon and not getting ourselves in a legal hassle of us not being cooperative. This lease is not necessary yet. It's like leasing your house and then asking people how many rooms do they want to use. Exercising the usual reviews and meetings will not treat Verizon any differently than we treat every other agency coming into Carmel. There is a process in Carmel. And in conclusion, delay the signing for tonight. A lease is simply not necessary. This technology needs to be worked on. We need to better understand it in the community so that we are not worried about it. And I think that is part of the educational process that a process will bring to us. An open, serious process through the commissions will provide a correct direction for the new technology to be implemented in Carmel safely. And it's premature to sign the lease agreement tonight. It needs something other than a lease. I don't care. I'm sorry that the attorneys are suggesting a lease. I don't believe a lease is necessary. There are things called memorandums of understanding, and there are other kinds of agreements that we can still be cooperative and move forward, but be well educated by the time we make the steps. Thank you.
Thank you,
That's it.
Jan.
I hear the bell. Thank you. Thank you.
Nice to see you again, Jan.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. This is Christy Hollenbeck.
Go ahead.
I can hear you.
I agree with Jan. I think a lease is premature, and I do appreciate all of your service. And I know this is a difficult thing that you're having to deal with, but I think in 2019, the residents of Carmel made it clear that they didn't want cell towers next to homes or cell sites, whatever you want to call it. And there are many health, environmental concerns about cell towers. And I realize that the corporations want to tell you otherwise, but I think I've done tons of research, and there definitely are health and environmental impacts. And we, as Carmel-by-the-Sea, we have a beautiful historic village, and we have we have the best argument for not having cell towers and not ruining the aesthetics of our village. And these cell towers are ugly. I've seen them in town. I've seen them up by the highway, and they are quite ugly and large, and they can add to them. And we don't need to be signing a lease agreement tonight. And this was not handled in a transparent way. It should go to planning first. We should have access to plans, and we should know exactly what is proposed. So I feel like, does anyone think that it's a good idea to sleep next to a high frequency microwave antenna? I mean, I don't think it is. And I think most people would agree. Everyone I've spoken to is not on board with this. Your community has spoken, and I think the community does not want cell towers next to residential homes. And you need to listen to your constituents, because we can fight this. Marin and Monterey and Danville, there's other communities all around the world they're fighting this. They wouldn't be fighting this if it wasn't dangerous. So please listen to the environmental and health impacts of this. I implore you, because I am very health conscious, and health is so important, and the health of myself, my family, and my village, my community is so important. So anyways, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the testimony. So anybody else? Britt, what do you think?
I'm
Pat,
not
I'd
seeing.
like to talk, if I may.
Okay.
Wayne Moon.
Yes, thank you. Several thoughts listening to the conversation so far. The first one is this something that this village people really want to have? I don't need it, and I know most of my neighbors do not need it. Second is, this is only one company, and I assume, and it's an assumption, that there will be other companies that want to install their towers too. And the third aspect is the village has a character that we try to maintain for its appeal to people coming, visitors coming into our community or its prosperity. I don't see a 5G tower or more than one adding to our village character at all. Fourth, if there's money involved in here, $1,000 a month is a pittance. It is not going to make a difference. And then finally, if it's actually going to happen, I hope not, part of the issue is where is it on the Sunset Center? It can be on top of the structure, which is really intrusive. It can be down lower, which is perhaps not so good for the company installing it. So I don't see the need for this, and I don't see a real advantage for us. Thank you for the opportunity to talk.
Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate it. Next speaker.
Well, I'm not sure, Mayor.
Oh, Mayor, this is Brian. I know Lisa Addy would like to make some comments, but there's a couple of points.
Brian, I don't think we were quite done with public testimony yet. I think there's Dave Quinner might be trying to say something. And Britt, isn't there somebody else out there that was trying to get in?
It looked like Dave Quinert was trying, but he was having feedback. He might have two devices going. Mr. Quinert, that would be a problem. That's why you're getting the feedback. I'm just kind of stalling. I don't see anyone else.
So, Mayor, during the stalling period, could I just comment? I know that Lisa Addy would like to speak. I do have a couple of these points here that I think it'd be helpful if I address first, and then if there were still any additional issues, Ms. Addy could certainly address those if that's.
Well, let's make sure we're done with public comments so we don't open and close like we did recently on another item.
I understand.
So, Britt, last call.
Yeah, I'm thinking you're fine. I mean, that was a good stall.
All right, that's it. Okay, Brian, the floor is yours.
Yeah, just a couple things, and then if Ms. Addy has anything to add. With regard to the lease amount of $1,000 a month, I should mention that the proposed sites for the that I mentioned in my earlier comments that would have been on power poles, the amount that Verizon would have paid there would have been somewhere in the range of about $100 to $150 a month per pole. So that would have been substantially less than the $1,000. So I think in that context, $1,000 is more than sufficient here, given the circumstances. With regards to whether it should be a lease or a memorandum of understanding, a memorandum of understanding and letters of intent are not a commitment, and that would not be sufficient to give Verizon the interest that they need in the site. On health concerns, I've already commented on that previously, that's not an issue that's been preempted by the FCC. I need to take a little drink of water here. I'm looking to see if there was anything else. Oh, with respect to other cities taking action to prevent cell facilities, I don't believe that that's correct. I know that the city of Monterey, which was given as an example, there are cell facilities there. I don't believe that under the FCC order that a city can prevent cell sites from being located within the city. A number of speakers talked about a cell tower. And again, as I indicated in my earlier comments, this would not be a cell tower. And I'm just looking to see if there was anything else.
Mr. Pierik, I've got a couple of things that came up. I can probably help, Mr. Mayor, if you'd like.
That'd be great, Chip. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Brown talked about the capacity for additional antenna on top of Sunset. There is a Sprint antenna up there now. It actually bounces off an antenna on our police department. And we understand that from the engineering standpoint, there's not enough room up there for additional antenna. So the kind of the roof of Sunset, when there's a flat roof portion where the most of the equipment goes, with the exception of the 24-inch structure, that will be reviewed again by the HRB and Planning Commission from the design review perspective. There's an additional room up there, and we will be looking at aesthetics. Mayor McLeod talked about the access, and in the lease, Verizon cannot just Verizon can't just go onto our property. We have to admit them. They have to work with our master tenant, which is Sunset Cultural Center Inc., to access the rooftop and in the antenna. And then Ms. Refuerzo talked about the new code section. And Brian, maybe you can speak about, or maybe Brandon, about where we are. I believe we are in the process of drafting an ordinance that follows federal law requirements, that requires things like co-location and the like. But again, maybe there's more that you can add about where we are in that process, sir.
Yeah, I'll be glad to. We are in the process of drafting an ordinance to make it consistent with current law and recent changes and in federal law. And that is being reviewed by staff, and that'll be brought back at appropriate time once that review process is completed.
Yes, and I believe that Michael also said earlier today that the maximum that either state or federal law limits the maximum amount of rent on private property to $270 per year. And we were able to negotiate, obviously, a much better, and maybe we can turn to, I'm sorry, Brian, I've forgotten the young man's last name.
Yeah, that's Michael Johnston. I believe he's on the line. He's with, I should mention, Michael's with Telecom, and their firm specializes in telecommunications laws, as the name would suggest. Michael, you want to take that one, Michael?
Sure. The point about rent is simply that sites that are proposed in the public right of way are heavily rate regulated, whether they're on government, or whether they're on utility poles, or whether they're on city-owned streetlights. They're in the amount of hundreds of dollars per year. This lease is going to generate the city revenue in $1,000 per month. So that would be the trade-off that was sought and achieved by the city in getting the lease on this property.
All right, thank you, Michael. Brian, anything else before I go to Lisa?
I think at this point, if Lisa believes there's something else that needs to be covered on the part of,
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I think that it was covered by the city attorney. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lisa. All right, I bring it back to council and then close the public comment period. Council members, your brothers?
You're muted. Excuse.
Jan, you're not muted. All right.
I'll go there.
Thanks, Bobby.
Yeah, Brian, I guess my question would be, what are our choices? What are our options in this particular discussion?
Well, your choices are either you approve the lease or you don't. If you don't approve the lease, then there are certain issues with Verizon, because Verizon's previous applications were denied under our code at the time, which I believe has got some issues with regards to, and I know Verizon contends this, under federal law with regards to the subject of preemption. So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, what Verizon has done with respect to the current applications, which are yet to be reviewed by finally reviewed by the city, is to, as I mentioned in my opening comments, reduce the number of cell sites from 5, as originally proposed, down to 2. And as I also mentioned, the city does not have the legal authority to completely ban cell sites. So it's a matter of Somebody needs to be muted there. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a matter of how many, not whether there are any. So the comments that have been made about how a city can prevent cell sites from being developed within a city, I don't believe is well taken.
It seems like, I know that you've worked pretty hard with getting the number down, the rent up, and we've gotten to this point. Now Verizon's on this call and they're hearing our constituents and what the citizens of this town want and desire. Is there any possibility that we could go back to them and try to rework this, something that would satisfy our residents?
Well, as I have indicated in my comments tonight, I think we've considered all of these issues. You've heard issues with regards to, I mean, just to pick out some examples, that calling these cell towers, they're not cell towers, saying that the city should not allow any cell towers or cell facilities. The city can't do that. The comment about the rent, I've already covered that issue. The issue about radio frequencies, the city is preempted from considering radio frequencies. So I'm not trying to minimize the comments that have been made by the public. I've heard them, I've reviewed them. However, I believe that under the circumstances, given the state of the law, that and given the fact that the number of cell sites have been reduced from 5 down to 2, is something that the council needs to give very serious consideration to.
Thank you, Brian.
Other questions or comments? Brian. So Brian, I might, my concern is that we have certain aspects of our zoning ordinances that talk about aesthetics, that talk about design, community character. So it sounds to me like even if the planning commission was to go ahead and find that these were inappropriate for those exact reasons, that then we would have to overturn their decision. Is that what you're saying? That we have no legal basis for denying this tower? That seems very odd to me, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, let me ask Michael to weigh in on that one.
These are technically separate issues. If the council or the planning commission did elect to deny the permits, there's a provision in the lease that would allow Verizon to terminate it because it couldn't operate the facility on that site without the government approvals to do so. So I want the council to think about these issues as entirely separate. One, the city is considering whether to lease this space, grant the private property rights for Verizon to use this building. And then secondarily, in your regulatory capacity, when an application comes before the city, whether it complies with the local and federal law. And I think those two decisions should be made separate. They should be kept separate. And this leasing decision does not require you or obligate you to make a permitting decision. They're
not wanting to give a lot of credit to somebody who ran against me for mayor, but Judy refers, it does bring up an interesting point, that it does seem slightly out of order procedurally to go ahead and grant a lease on property that we were not going to necessarily allow them to build on.
Well, let me answer that one. Legally, the lease needs to come first because Verizon needs to have site control before they can submit the application. So that's the reason why the lease has to be considered before the application is considered. So
you don't feel that we're prejudicing our decisions in advance of the Planning Commission's recommendation, regardless of what it is? If let's just hypothetically say, Planning Commission decides it's inappropriate for aesthetics and community character consistency purposes, then we go ahead and say, that it comes to us on appeal and we go, okay, we're going to deny it. What is our legal exposure then? Well, let me say this about that. First of all, you've got two separate issues going on here, as Michael indicated in his comments. The first matter is the one before the council tonight, which is the lease. That is in your what's called your proprietary capacity. It is a separate issue from your regulatory capacity. You are not prejudiced, to get directly to your question, there is no prejudice at all for your approval of the lease tonight and the impact that that would have on your ability to review the project at the application stage. That would be at your regulatory stage. Now, I will say, as I did in my earlier comments, that we would need to make sure that that review is done consistent with federal and state law. But there is no prejudice at all to the city in approving this lease
in terms of its impact on your regulatory review, which would come at a later date.
Brian, if I may, Section 34 of the lease also spells this out in clear terms, that none of what the city will do with this lease will have any guarantee of securing any government approvals related to your permitting authority. So there's this. We saw this issue coming down the line. We addressed it directly in the lease, and it should be satisfied by that provision.
And I would caution my colleagues to make any statements about how they might vote in the future, for fear that that might give the applicant an opportunity to say you were prejudiced at your decision that you made in the previous stage. Brian,
and I would add to that, just to supplement the comments that Michael made about paragraph 34. I'm not going to read the entire paragraph, but I'll pick one sentence out, which I think is particularly enlightening. This is paragraph 34. It's on page, I think, 81 of your packet. Quote, the grant of this lease does not assure lessee, which is Verizon, that it will be successful in whole or in part in securing any or all required lessor permits, lessor being the city, or any other required permits or authorizations or government approvals. So this serves to provide yet further confirmation of the comment I made earlier, which is the lease is separate from your permitting authority and should be considered separately.
I appreciate that I read that in the staff report also. I just couldn't find the site. Thank you. Okay, council members, what do you think? Jeff?
Thank you, and an abundance of thanks to Mr. Pierik and Mr. Johnston for doing all this work on this lease. Is very appreciative, and especially Brian for your comments regarding the differentiation between the leasing of the property and the sort of planning commission permitting property. Exactly. I think that's an important distinction that that shows that this is part of the public process with respect to leasing a piece of property. And I think that's important. I would also say, with respect to sort of, in another tack, the discretionary process about whether or not we lease, whether or not the city chooses to lease this property to Verizon, I think that the alternative to not leasing this property to Verizon is to have Verizon come back with another application to place these cell towers somewhat similar to what they did before. So we've been down that road. We saw how that road ended, and this is another road. And so I will be supporting, I think this is the right thing to do, given the legal constraints that the city is under. This is the right path. And so I will be supporting the lease.
Carrie, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think I appreciate the staff comments to try to differentiate really what we're voting on here. And I appreciate Councilmember Barron's comments about the historical perspective. We've been trying to work out just this lease with Verizon, and it is part of the total process that we need to go through. This is not the end of the process. This is actually the beginning of the process, to go through more public comment when it comes to the Planning Commission and Historical Resources Board. So it's important that we have these meetings to try to get the facts out to the public in terms of it's not a cell tower, it's a 24-inch antenna. So there's certain things that it's really important that we have these meetings to try to get the facts and what our intent with the lease is. So I will, because it is part of the process, I'm going to support the movement forward with this lease.
All right, Karen or Bobby, do you want to opine? I sense there's a motion out there. Could frame the balance of the discussion around a motion if we were so inclined. But if you guys want to weigh in before the motion, that's fine with me.
Yeah, Mayor, I'll weigh in as far as I agree this is part of the process, and I do like the fact that it is two separate issues that we're dealing with. And approving this tonight allows us, our residents, people that are concerned about this, to find some data, find case fact, give it to our attorney so that if if the planning department wants to approve or doesn't want to approve, they have more information. So it gives us time to get more information on specifics of what is going to happen at the next step. So I would make the motion to approve this item.
A motion, to have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All right, Karen, did you want to opine?
Yes. What I'm troubled by, because it took a 2 or 3 days of actually reading through this legalese to even begin to understand this lease. I still question and respect our residents being confused by the process being hard to understand, why this has to be the first step before it goes to the other 2 steps. Because I myself have a hard time understanding why this isn't the last step in the process to let a lease once the approvals or disapproval, I guess, was also a possibility. But let's just say it was approved by the Historic Resources Board and the Planning Commission, and then it would come to us at the end to actually sign a lease for it. So I am troubled by the process. I am troubled that our residents feel that this was put on a consent agenda and not necessarily brought out to their attention in the way that they might have wanted it to be. That troubles me. I think for transparency purposes, something that is as emotional and aesthetically important to the city perhaps could even have been part of a town hall type discussion. And I would certainly hope if this lease is passed tonight, that it would be a vigorous process and a widely advertised process when it does go to Historical Resources Board and the Planning Commission, and that the public be fully informed why this process comes in this order, because I did not understand that either. I also am troubled that there's not an escalator clause in this lease, that we are committing to this lease really for 20 years at $1,000 a year. I did a little checking, and there are actually professional negotiators that negotiate for cell tower lease pricing. And I don't think that, that's out of the question to have maybe considered that. The health issues are emotional, they're visceral, they're things that people are truly worried about. Whether there's science behind those things, I don't know. I am not a medical doctor. I do not know the seriousness of those issues. We have to trust that our government has our best interest in mind, and we are part of that. So I think the discussion tonight, we have all realized that it's a big issue, it's an important issue, and we want people to understand the process. We want them to know that this does not commit us to final approval. That's been stated. We also, I want to know for sure, not just, I would like to know if the rooftop would be part and parcel to more antennas. And I would hope that the answer truly is no. So I would like more information on that. What I thought a few days ago was just an item on the consent agenda has certainly occupied my mind for several days. And I would really like people to know that I do not take this lightly. I don't think any of you take it lightly. I think it's something that we are all learning about process tonight. But thank you for giving me the time to express my feelings.
No problem. That's why we have it under order of business tonight, is so we could have a full public discussion about it. So that said, we do have a motion, we do have a second. Is there any other discussion? I don't see anything. Britt, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Barron,
Yes.
Ferlito. Councilmember Ferlito, you're muted.
Yes.
Councilmember Tice,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards,
Yes.
Mayor Potter.
Aye.
Okay, the item passes with 5 yes votes.
And I want to thank you all for that debate. I think it's been very, very productive. And I know it's been a complicated process. Brian, I appreciate the help you offered. Michael, you too. Appreciate that. I do appreciate the public testimony tonight also. That brings us to the most complicated item tonight. That's anything on the future agenda. Anybody like to put out there? Does anybody wants to clutter up an agenda for the future? All right, seeing no one. Let's remember that we are meeting next week for our retreat. I'd encourage the public to participate in that as much as possible. And subsequently on the 18th, I think we have our budget final briefing. So where we stand with that. So thank you all for your attendance tonight. I appreciate it. We do stand adjourned. We will see you tomorrow night, same time, same place. Thank you.